view the presentation from Colleen and the update on the Rotunda. So Colleen, welcome.
Hi, everyone. It's Colleen Chattergoon from City DOT. Andrew, can you let my colleagues in, Jonine Kidder and others?
Let me do that right now. Although I don't know that I've been made a co-host, so I don't know that I can do that.
You're a co-host now.
So I am?
Yes, that's right.
Oh, okay.
I can help look for the individuals as well. Colleen, who are they?
It's Jonine Kidder and Oscar and we and Tom Ciccarone.
I got Jonine and
I just got Jonine, yeah.
It's about 5 or 6 folks.
Say them again, please.
Jonine Kidder.
We did her.
Oscar Robles.
I got him.
Okay. Wei Yang. And Tom.
I just got Wei Yang.
His name, yeah. Tom's last name begins with a C.
Caffrey.
Sirencio.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Got him.
Okay.
And then it's Matt Drury.
Okay, got him too.
Okay.
And Tia Ganapali. And I think Nate Grove as well.
I got Nate.
Okay. And John Harold.
Got
I
him.
just did John Harold.
Greg Fisher is the presenter, if you can make him the presenter.
Got him.
Okay, great.
Okay.
I think
But
you
there
got
was
it.
one name that you just mentioned that I don't know that we found.
Satya Gagarelli.
I see that person. I can change that person to panelist. Okay.
Okay, great. And Greg Fisher is going to be giving the presentation.
Yep, got him.
We should be good.
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. So as I mentioned, I'm Colleen Chattergoon from the City Department of Transportation, and I'm here with my colleagues in our Bridges Division to give the 3 committees an update on the Rotunda. And I'd like to introduce my colleague, Jonine Kidder, who's from our Bridges Division. She will introduce all of the others who are here and also do the opening remarks as well. So thank you so much.
Thanks.
I don't know if you can unmute her or.
Anyone that's been promoted should be able to unmute themselves.
Okay, great. Jonine, whenever you're ready.
Hi, everybody. My name is Oscar Robles. I'm Janine's deputy. I'm the director of Community Affairs Division of Bridges.
Okay, great. Thanks. Thanks.
Is she available?
Yes, I'm available, but I
Okay,
wasn't
yeah.
allowed to speak.
Okay, great. There she goes. Jonine is available to speak. Thank you.
This was quite confusing this evening. So I'm Jonine Kidder. As Colleen said, I'm the Executive Director of Community Affairs and the Chief of Staff in Bridges. We've assembled a team of people tonight to bring you an update on this project. Those of you who remember us from the days when we were all allowed to be together know that we all worked very hard to get this project to you. And so tonight we're joined by my counterpart at the Department of Parks, Matt Drury, and Nate Grove, as Colleen said, from the Marina Project. What we will do is we will give you a little bit of an introduction on how the 2 projects are coming together. I'm going to leave that to the Parks team to further discuss, and I will just introduce Wei Yang, who is our Deputy Director for Manhattan and Brooklyn Roadway Bridges. Oscar Robles, you've met as my Deputy in Community Affairs. Satya Gagapali is part of WE's team on the engineering side. And then with us tonight is Greg Fisher, who you should all recognize from our many presentations we made with you during design. And I'm very happy to have along tonight Tom Cirincione, who is in his office there waving. He is your resident engineer for the project. And so, Greg, if you've been made a co-host and you can put up the presentation.
I'm getting an error. It says host disabled participant screen sharing. So I'm not able to share my
We
screen.
should be able to fix that.
Yeah,
Okay.
I got it.
Thank you.
Try now.
Okay. And as soon as Greg gets it to the cover, Matt Jury from Parks will take it away.
Thanks, Janine. My name is Matt Jury. Hello, everyone. Thanks for having us. I'm the Director of Government Relations for the New York City Parks Department. Really excited to be here in coordination with DOT to offer this update on the Rotunda project. Just to sort of provide some reminder or context about the broader context here. There's a lot going on. The city's in the process of conducting essentially two very large, complicated infrastructure improvement projects within Riverside Park, which we're very, very excited about. One is obviously the reconstruction and dredging of the 79th Street Boat Basin Marina, which I think a lot of you maybe on this committee and other committees have heard a fair amount about. That dialogue is going to continue. It's in design, and that conversation will that discussion will continue. What we're here more pointedly today for is to discuss the adjacent project directly to the east, which is the 79th Street Rotunda. Really a massive project, which DOT will be spearheading. We're very, very excited. This represents, between the two projects, hundreds of millions of dollars of investment into some very important park amenities. Riverside Park is obviously a jewel of our portfolio that we love and cherish, and these are amenities that are important, obviously, for local residents, but also, they serve sort of as a broader draw for New Yorkers all across the city, obviously, in terms of their unique nature and in terms of the amenities that they offer. So we're very, very excited that these projects are moving because they're in such close physical proximity. It makes and the Rotunda construction is starting earlier than the Marina project. It's important that the two projects remain closely coordinated. So Parks and EDC on the Marina side, and then Parks and DOT are all in ongoing conversations to make sure that these projects stay closely coordinated. DOT is our wonderful partners, and their expertise and experience in this realm is very important. They'll be incorporating elements into the Rotunda project that are helpful on the Marina side, vital for the Marina side, and that coordination can get kind of complicated, and it's a lot of moving parts, of course. But but at the end of the day, we that coordination, that preparation certainly results in longer term time savings and cost savings. So we're looking forward to the projects moving forward. I think you'll start to see signs of life in terms of the presence, and Greg will in terms of the Rotunda project, and Greg will speak to that more pointedly. But broadly, we just wanted to thank everybody for the opportunity to offer this update on the Rotunda project, and we look forward to continuing the conversation as this project moves forward. So with that, I'll hand it to Greg.
Appreciate the introduction. We're going to start with a brief agenda to set the stage on what we're going to cover tonight. We'll start with a high-level summary of the themes for the West 79th Street Rotunda, as well as the Marina projects. Then we're going to provide an update on the West 79th Street Rotunda project as we start construction and some upcoming activities we'll see in the field, as well as we want to discuss some important developments, contractor staging areas, field office locations, pedestrian rerouting, bus relocation during construction, and then finally introduce our community liaison. And then obviously at the end, we'll have an opportunity to address any questions that you have once we're done with the formal presentation. So on the right, you see a historic photo of the Roofside Park, just to kind of set the stage. This is right after construction of the Rotunda, taken prior to the establishment of the mature landscaping that we can see today, as well as before construction of the Marina that was alluded to earlier. The teams that we're dealing with here, Parks is the lead agency for both the West 79th Street Rotunda and Marina projects. And in this capacity, Parks oversees these two projects and most importantly is championing the complex coordination between the two. The West 79th Street project on the left is being delivered jointly by New York City DOT and Parks. Design was performed by a joint venture of HER and AECOM. Hardesty and Hanover, a new name to the folks here, is on board as the resident engineer to ensure that the contractor adheres to the contract requirements and specifications. And then finally, our contractor for this project is Judd Lau. And then on the right, the Marina project is being advanced by a team led by EDC and Parks with support from a design team headed by Moffitt and Nickel. The Marina project is currently in the design phase, and then Parks is facilitating this open communication between our two teams to make sure that we're delivering a coordinated project. A little bit of background that may be a refresher for some of you who are involved in our previous presentations, but the Rotunda project includes major rehabilitation of a total of 7 bridges that comprise the Rotunda facility. The first bridge is shown here in the area highlighted in yellow. The West 79th Street Bridge over Amtrak was originally constructed in 1937. It's owned and maintained by New York City DOT, and it was the last major rehabilitation of this structure was undertaken over 45 years ago in 1975. This bridge carries east and west bound traffic along West 79th Street over the Amtrak Empire Line, which is just under the Henry Hudson Parkway in this location. There are a total of 4 lanes on this bridge, 2 travel lanes and 2 parking lanes that currently serve as the layover area for the M79 bus. Sidewalks along both the north and south bridge fascias, and these sidewalks are currently protected by concrete barrier. We also have shared bike lanes in both these travel lanes in this location of the project. Next are the 6 bridges that can, I guess, make up the Rotunda. They were originally constructed in 1936. These bridges are all owned and maintained by Parks, and there has never been a major rehabilitation of these structures in their nearly 85 years of continuous operation. There are 3 distinct levels of the Rotunda: the traffic circle level at the top, the pedestrian plaza level in the middle, and then the garage at the bottom, which you can't really see in the image here. We're gonna have a detailed graphic on a slide coming up that will just depict these 3 levels for those who aren't intimately familiar with the various levels. The Rotunda traffic circle is the terminus of West 79th Street. It serves as the interchange between the Henry Hudson Parkway and then City Street network. The yellow shaded area in this image indicates the extent of the Rotunda structure. And it's important to keep in mind that some of the landscaped areas closest to the traffic circle are supported on the lower levels of the structure. The Rotunda currently houses Riverside Park maintenance and operations staff, concessionaire operation on the pedestrian plaza level, as well as parking for the marina and some parks maintenance and operations folks in the garage. This slide includes a cutaway graphic that illustrates the 3 distinct levels of the Rotunda facility: the traffic circle level at the top. That's a connection between the Henry Hudson Parkway southbound on and off ramps and West 79th Street. And there are also ramps that serve for access to and from the lower level garage. The middle level is the pedestrian plaza level, includes restrooms, a fountain, and concessionaire spaces. And then the lower level garage houses the Riverside Park maintenance and operations office, mechanical and electrical equipment for the facility, and it has parking spaces for the marina and park staff. And then there are step-lit ramps that provide access for pedestrians between these 3 levels as well as into the park. The blue shaded area in the image here indicates the approximate rehabilitation limits for the Rotunda project. Construction activities are restricted to the Rotunda and these areas immediately adjacent to the facility. Existing trees will be protected and replaced, and any landscaped areas disturbed during construction will be restored, and all tree and landscaping work will be performed in accordance with park standards. It's important to note that the ball fields to the south of the Rotunda that were topic of discussion in earlier coordination meetings will remain open throughout construction. Moving on, contractor staging areas. The contractor will utilize the maroon spaces numbered 1N, 1S, and 2 for staging and storage of construction equipment and materials. Areas 1N and 1S along West 79th Street, east of the Henry Hudson Parkway, and the jug handle ramps that are shaded in yellow are very low volume ramps that will be closed throughout all phases of construction to facilitate safe traffic movements while the roads are partially closed. Area 2 is a separate contractor staging area adjacent to the ball fields. All 3 of these areas will be established in the month of February. As I stated before, existing trees will be protected and landscaped areas disturbed during construction will be restored, all that work being done to park standards once the contractor vacates those spaces. The existing park paths immediately adjacent to West 79th Street will be closed to accommodate these staging areas, 1N and 1S. And the park path that passes beneath the Henry Hudson Parkway jug handle ramp on the north side of West 79th Street will remain open and provide continuous park access. This is going to be shown in a little bit greater detail on the next 2 slides. So don't panic if you couldn't follow what I was saying there. The ball fields on the south side of the Rotunda, as I stated before, will remain open throughout construction and unimpacted by the contractor's work.
Hey, Andrew, quickly, can you let Caitlin McGee in? She's the liaison for the project. Thanks.
Sure will.
So pedestrian routing. During the initial phase of construction, this initial stage we're working on right now, the existing park paths shown in this graphic in red will be closed and those shown in green will remain open. Advanced signage will be placed at key locations to direct park patrons to the open paths, and fencing will be provided to separate pedestrian paths from construction areas. Modifications to the pedestrian routing plan as construction progresses through the facility will be communicated to the community, obviously well in advance of implementation. Our next slide, this is a focused graphic of the same path that shows the pedestrian movements through the facility specifically during this initial stage of construction. Access to and from the park will be via the upper and lower stepped ramps on the north side of the facility, connected by a dedicated area on the north side of the pedestrian plaza. The existing timber ramps will be removed from the step ramps. Signage and fencing will be provided to direct and protect pedestrians moving through the facility. And in addition, lighting will be installed along the path, meeting the illumination requirements established by City DOT street lighting. Field offices that will be established for the folks working in the field will consist of temporary trailers to house the contractor as well as the agency project personnel that will be on site throughout construction. These trailers will be installed in the maroon shaded areas 4N to the north and 4S to the south. Within the triangular landscaped areas between the Henry Hudson Parkway main line and the northbound on and off ramps. Installation of these field offices will also commence in February. Existing trees will be protected and replaced, and the landscape areas disturbed during construction will be restored in accordance with park standards. It's important to note that there are some limited incidental tree removals in area 4S adjacent to the Henry Hudson Parkway. Given that these areas 4N and 4S are bounded by the Henry Hudson Parkway and the ramps, impacts to the park users will be limited as these areas are not readily accessible to park patrons currently. Area 4N will be for the contractor's field office, and area 4S is for the agency field office. That'll include parks personnel, New York City DOT personnel, the resident engineering staff, as well as the community outreach specialists. Another potential contractor staging area that was discussed extensively during the design phase is the area up at West 95th, 96th Street, adjacent to the Henry Hudson Parkway. This is the area in the image bounded by the maroon line. It's a paved area currently utilized by park staff. Parks and the contractor are exploring reconfiguring operations at this location to provide the contractor with additional space for storage of construction materials and equipment. And given that this is an existing paved area, impacts to the park, existing trees, landscaping will be non-existent. A little bit on our cost and schedule. The construction cost for the Rotunda project came in at just below $150 million. The total construction duration is planned at 48 months, with 24 months of work for the roadway work within the traffic circle, the associated ramps, and West 79th Street. The balance of the construction will be performed in the pedestrian plaza and garage levels and will not impact park users beyond the area immediately around the Rotunda. Relocation of the M79 bus layover areas took place in January, and we're going to discuss bus relocation in a little bit more detail in the next two slides. Field mobilization comprised of installation of the field offices we just discussed, and establishment of the staging areas will also take place in February. And then a brief update on the next 3 months of construction, what we're looking at, completion of this mobilization, including establishment of the field office and the staging areas, and then limited demolition and construction activities in the non-public areas of the pedestrian plaza and garage levels. So the Rotunda serves as the terminus for the M79 bus, as I mentioned before, and the Rotunda traffic circle is used for a turnaround for these buses, and the buses previously laid over in the parking lanes just east of the traffic circle. The existing layover areas are the orange shaded areas in the top of the graphic, just under the Henry Hudson Parkway. These layover areas were relocated to the blue shaded area along the south side of West 79th Street between Riverside Drive and West End Ave, and that occurred in January. This relocation was performed to facilitate establishment of those staging areas along West 79th Street. Relocation of these bus layover areas will be in place for the full 48 months planned for construction. Once roadway construction activities commence, relocation of the M79 bus from the Rotunda traffic circle will also be required. At this time, a bus detour will be implemented in conjunction with New York City Transit to reroute buses from the traffic circle along a clockwise loop from West 79th Street down West End Ave to 72nd Street, and then back up along Riverside Drive to West 79th Street. A detour route is shown in red on the graphic, and temporary bus stops will be established at the two locations on West 79th Street, shaded in blue while this detour is in place. And this detour will remain in place for the 24 months of roadway construction. There will be associated shifts of pedestrians and bikes as we move through the various stages of construction, and those will be addressed in subsequent project updates as we get closer to those specific activities. The Rotunda project has engaged a full-time community liaison to facilitate communication with the community and provide stakeholders with project updates throughout construction. Caitlin McGee is a senior community outreach specialist who's dedicated to this project and will provide regular construction updates and serve as the point of contact for any questions that may arise throughout construction. Ms. McGee will be located on site once the field offices are installed. Her contact information is provided at the bottom. And keep in mind when you're contacting her about this project, please reference contract HBM 1189 in any project correspondence. This concludes the West 79th Street project update, and we're available and happy to address any questions that you have at this time.
Thank you, Greg. I'm sure there are lots of questions. Just let me ask a quick one. Is any Amtrak work going on under the roadway while you're doing this?
Do you mean work performed by Amtrak or?
Yes, on their tracks. Yes.
No, not to our knowledge.
Okay, and one of the relocated bus stops that you showed for the M79 was just to the east side of West End Avenue, yet you have the bus turning south. Is that going to be a problem with the bus being at the curb and having to make a left turn there?
We're in conversation with Transit about these locations. We know that the community board, I think in all our conversations, requested the bus stop to be at the location shown. And the Transit is open to having it at that southeast corner or at the northwest corner I think originally it was proposed for the northwest corner. We were asked to keep it at the southeast corner. If it's all decided as this moves ahead that that's not the space for it, Transit is certainly going to work with us to make sure.
From the
it's in-
map that you have there, it's at the northeast corner.
I'm
Perhaps
sorry.
it should be at the southwest corner, I'm guessing.
Yes, and that was one of the locations we looked at, and this was the location that Transit prefers. At this point, that's the location that they preferred. But again, they are very open to working with us on it.
Thank you. Howard, do you have any?
No, not at this point.
Any of our parks or preservation co-chairs have any questions? Wow, silence.
I
Unless-
have a question.
Go ahead, Natasha.
If you could go back to maybe slide 9. Yeah, so I'm looking at the highlighted, the green highlighted areas. Are you going to put new lighting in there along with the signage? Like this area in general, the pedestrian access into the park from 79th Street is very sort of desolate. Will there be enhanced lighting over here as well?
Do you mean along the path that's shown in green, the
Yes,
existing
yes.
park path? I don't think we anticipated any additional lighting there. We can certainly ask our field team to take a survey and make sure that all the fixtures that are there are operating. And if there aren't operating, we can certainly make sure they're all working. I don't know that we had a concern that we had heard before that the lighting there was insufficient, but it's certainly something we can go back and take a look at.
Yeah, if you could. It is kind of insufficient, and I had raised it at prior parks meetings. So even if it's just something temporary during the course of the construction, that would be very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Clary, is your hand up?
Yes, it is. I have two questions.
Sure.
The first one relates to this slide. Thank you, Natasha, for bringing it back up or asking them to bring it back up. You showed closed off pedestrian paths that seem to go up to but not cross the esplanade. My basic question is, does anything you anticipate from now to 4 years from now anticipate at any time closing any part of the esplanade to pedestrian and cycling traffic?
I will defer that to Greg. I think the answer is no, Clary.
I like the no if it's true.
I believe that's the case. We're not expecting to impact the esplanade. Greg, can you confirm that?
That is correct.
That's great. My second question, if you could go back to the other slide we had a moment ago, which was the bus rerouting slide. That shows the route going all the way down to 72nd Street. I happen to live there. And then coming back around with 2 temporary new bus stops. My question on this one is, if the bus is for something up to 4 years is going to be going all the way down west end of 72nd Street and then all the way back up, has anybody considered whether it might be practical to have 1 or more additional stops so that to take advantage of all of this additional routing that this bus is doing, one down near 72 or in the 74th or something like that on either Riverside Drive or 72nd, to allow people to avoid transferring, for instance, on Broadway to a second bus.
So first of all, I think the impact is the 24 months. Greg, is that correct?
Okay.
Not the 48?
Okay.
And I think that we did have an initial conversation with Transit about it. And again, it's certainly something that can continue. We have a little time on this one in terms of the actual rerouting of the bus. But I believe their concern, and again, this is something we should take up with them again, was that the additional stops would have to be accounted for in the bus runs, and that there is a concern on their part about the headway on the existing route. And that's something that they would absolutely have to take a look at is where those bus stops would go would mean eliminating additional parking, making sure there's room for the stops. All that goes with that kind of bus planning. As you know, we would have to sit and work with them on bus planning and bus operations for any additional stops there. One of the things that we did bring to their attention and ask to make sure that they would allow anyone who wanted to get to the temporary bus stop that is the closest, if you will, to the rotunda, the upper blue line in this image, that anyone who wanted to ride the existing, if you will, deadhead route, the detour route, that they would allow people to ride along the entire detour and disembark the bus at the intersection of Riverside Drive and 79th, which brings them the closest to the rotunda where they would have been before. If they choose to get off at West End Avenue and walk the extra block, they could do that. But if somebody wants to ride the deadhead and get off then at the corner of Riverside Drive, they would be able to do that. We can certainly go back to them and have a conversation about additional passenger boarding. As I said, we have some time.
Yeah, I think we're going to ask Transit to come and speak about this. It doesn't make any sense to have no additional stops.
Yeah, thanks, Janine, and I understand it. It is, and that was a thorough response to my question. I understand it is complicated with pluses and minuses, but I agree with and endorse what Andrew just said. I think it's well worth looking at, and not just to get on the bus, but to get off the bus somewhere along that whatever you just called it. Thanks.
Understood.
Yeah.
Okay, I see Jay's hand is up. Jay, do you have a question?
Yes, I did. If you can go back on the slide to the on and off ramps, the yellow ramps. Yeah. So I apologize. I just want to make sure I understand. Do these represent the southbound on ramp and the northbound exit ramp at 79th Street?
Greg, do you want to walk through the ramps again? I know this can be a little, I think some people in the community may not realize that there's this almost duplicate set of ramps there at the rotunda.
Yeah, this isn't the northbound exit ramp to 79th Street. This is the entrance to the northbound from 79th Street.
Yeah, so Greg has the
one
cursor.
on the left.
Yeah, Greg has the cursor, so maybe Greg can walk through what I would call the normal entrance and exit ramps that everyone uses, and then kind of explain these ones that are outlined in yellow.
So on the southbound side, if you're coming southbound through these trees, you can get off here and access the traffic circle. And likewise, you continue down and get onto the southbound Henry Hudson Parkway.
And
that's southbound.
That southbound exit is going to remain open.
No, there will be a point of time where there'll be some modifications to the operation of the traffic circle. But let's go through for a second, if you will, Greg, the northbound ramps, the regular, I call them northbound ramps.
Right. So if you're coming northbound, you could get off at this ramp and continue down to 79th Street. And you could also come over 79th Street and get off on the yellow ramp and loop back around.
Okay.
And then if you're coming from the traffic circle, you could get onto the other jug handle ramp and come northbound. And then there is the northbound ramp from West 79th Street up to northbound Henry Hudson Parkway.
So those yellow ramps are almost a duplicative set of ramps. They provide access for vehicles that are coming essentially from the garage, from the rotunda. Regular through traffic will continue to use the ramps that they use now. I believe, Greg, there is one period of time during the construction project where we will have to close the ramp, the southbound exit ramp, to make the connections to the rehabilitated rotary. I don't recall what phase that's in. Greg, do you recall?
In stage 3, the entire traffic circle will be closed for a very short duration in order to make those connections. In the other stages, this off ramp will remain open and the on ramp will close.
And I think that we were required by our own Office of Construction Mitigation and Control for that period of time to be extremely limited and to be only during the summer, because that was the expected mitigation was to any kind of traffic that might be associated with operating schools or educational facilities or camps or whatever. The idea was that we would pick the window of time where our traffic studies showed the lowest volume of traffic. And that's why I think it's a contract requirement that that work has to be performed only during that particular summer window. It's not subject to being shifted to another time period.
And when you say that exit will have to be closed for a short duration, what can you give an estimate of what you mean by a short duration in stage 3?
Greg or Tom? Greg, okay, 60 days, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you.
Let me just ask one quick question before I call on other folks. Has DOT yet identified what measures you're going to take to mitigate the additional traffic that is likely to use 95th, 96th Street on the Henry Hudson Parkway and surrounding streets?
We definitely are aware of it and have taken a look at it. And the mitigations that are proposed are at this point additional traffic agents for that location. And again, adjusting any signal timing that we can look at to maintain the area as safely as we can and make sure that both the pedestrians are protected there as well as the vehicles that'll be using those ramps.
Okay, will you be coming back to give us some real details about those items at a future meeting, perhaps?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Mark Diller, your hand is up.
Thank you. A couple of quick points, if I may. The first is that I didn't want to lose track of a debt of gratitude that I think we all owe to the planning team for keeping both ball fields open throughout the duration. I remember a lot of intense community input about one ball field and then another and back and forth, and the solution of finding other places to put the staging areas is, I think, very much appreciated and will be by the Little Leaguers as well as everybody else. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
The historic structure aspects of the renovation of the Rotunda structure, am I correct that that's just not the scope of tonight's meeting, and perhaps there'll be another briefing on that later on?
Yes, tonight's focus was to come back to you and bring the project back to everybody's attention. Essentially, I believe, the historic scope that we spent a tremendous amount of time working with the community on, the Guastavino tiles and the treatments to the Park Department office, what the gates would look like, the film on the glass panels, the color schemes, the fountain, all of those details are in place as they were when we showed you the last final design. Everything's been signed off and approved by LPC. If at some point it'll be helpful for us to revisit that with you, we're happy to do that and come back and kind of refresh everybody's memory for whatever committee would like to hear about it.
So thank you for that too. I'm looking forward to seeing the little turtles in the fountain find their way back to us.
Very good.
The last question that I had, and forgive me because I am not clear exactly how our resolution turned out about this, and maybe I should just yield the floor to Ken or Rich or others who probably know this much better than I do. But there was, if you go to the slide that shows the green bike lane running through the traffic circle. I'm sorry, I don't know which number that is. That's the one. Thank you so much. So it appears from that, first of all, yes, you have the historic lamps shown in that drawing, so even more confidence about the historic nature of the renovations. There was a time at which there was a discussion about protecting those bike lanes in some way, whether it be flexible bollards or what have you. And again, I'm essentially very grateful that the original proposal of that spongy surface and to force the bikes into the travel lanes has been abandoned in favor of this design. So that's a much superior program. But there was the suggestion of flexible bollards or some other kind of delineators. Is that still a possibility or something that we can advocate for?
Flexible delineators are always a possibility. They're not especially heavy. We don't really like the idea of adding things like that to a bridge deck. I think our experience with them has been less than satisfactory for a couple of reasons. One, recall again that the buses will be back. And in all of our conversations with the Transit Authority and the dimensions on particularly the articulated buses, that they're likely to be wiped out pretty quickly as the buses go through the rotary. But in addition, they are particularly victims of the snow removal operations that go on, other types of cleaning. And so we generally find that the life cycle of those flexible delineators is not especially long. It's one of many things. Greg could probably speak to the many devices that we have tried to look at for this. Again, going forward, if that becomes something that everybody feels is the absolute best option and we can accommodate it, it's certainly not the kind of capital design choice that has to be locked in at this moment.
Thanks very much. I'll yield the floor. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think
Ken,
Ken
you
is
are
next.
next, and Roberta after you.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you. Nice to see you, Janine. And you're the only person I remember from the last presentation, which I think was before the pandemic.
There you go.
And we weren't wearing masks. I have a couple of questions. One following up on Mark's question about the traffic circle. We did actually in our resolution ask for protection on the bike lane. So will this be the time to advocate for that, or will you be coming back with a design for protection where we will get a chance to see it? Or
I don't want to leave this meeting with a sense that it's something that we feel is undecided. I think our position at this point, again, and this has been taken under with an extended amount of coordination with our traffic planning and management unit. We refer to them as TPM. That's where our bike and ped and public safety units work with that group. We generally defer to them in terms of what bike path design and pedestrian designs look like. This is essentially what we expect to be the final design, is this configuration you're looking at now, without a specific device separating the vehicles from the bikes. We are using the painted surface for the cyclists. Again, it's in my mind not a closed door to looking at something else as we go forward. It's a very long duration for this project. Flexible delineators or some other type of device is generally something that would be installed towards the end of the project when we're looking at actually having the final pavement and the final deck surface in place. So we certainly have time to figure out over the next 1, 2, 3 years, is there a better device that's going to come out than the ones we have in our current toolbox? But again, this is the configuration that's in our contract, subject again to continuing conversations of something we can find that everyone feels is better and yet allows the buses to move through and the snow to be removed and all of those issues. It's in our mind, this is the design that we have, but we're certainly open to looking at other items going forward.
okay. And also in our resolution, we had asked for warning lights or the possibility of warning lights, tactile warnings, and signage for drivers exiting onto the traffic circle from the north. Are there any provisions for that in this design, or will that come later also?
There are provisions. This presentation does not particularly have an extensive signage plan built into this presentation. Greg, do you, I don't know if at your fingertips here, calling you out kind of on short notice, if you can speak to a little bit of the signage plan, but there's an extensive signage plan on every bridge project. If it's not something you have the background on tonight, Greg, we can certainly flag that for a follow-up.
We do have 2 locations of warning. There is for the traffic moving down 79th Street. There have been a history of vehicles driving straight into the barrier. And then the point you specifically mentioned in your question, the stop sign where cars have used it more as a yield and come through, and it creates a hazard for. So we did, you can see here, there's the geometry. This is called a calming measure, where the geometry is created with the kink to slow vehicles down and get more adherence to the stop. And there also is a flashing beacon in the contract there to draw emphasis to the stop sign for people coming off the Henry Hudson at speed.
Okay, another thing we'd ask for is something on the ground, some tactile warning to slow down drivers.
Rumble strip of sorts.
Rumble strip,
Yeah.
something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I certainly think that's something we can take a look at. Again, I don't know that every single device works at every location. Ramps are sometimes in a different category for speed, but we can certainly take a look at a rumble strip or something like that.
Can I just interject? Ken is quoting our resolution that we adopted quite a while ago. Didn't you get that resolution? Because these are really relatively minor things in a $150 million project. And so you say you could look at them. I was certain that you had been forwarded that resolution quite some time ago.
Yes, we were. And the resolution was carefully considered. Again, I can't speak to every individual design element on this presentation tonight. I don't have all of that specific detail with us. Again, this was a general kind of update on the project. That's what I'm saying. We can certainly get back to you and determine if an individual sign or a rumble strip or something is included in the contract. I just don't want to speak out of turn tonight.
Our resolution wasn't just a rumble strip. We asked for a physically separated bike lane. So why?
No,
is
I
that
understand
not
the
in
bike lane. Well, the bike lane issue, I understand, was extensively discussed. There were many alternatives that were reviewed and considered by the team here at DOT. And this is the design that was determined to be the one that was the most feasible. And I know the design for the bike lane, it doesn't satisfy some folks' concerns, and for other people,
Well,
it's
the community board, and that's why I'm addressing it. Our community board asked for this, so we would like to know why it's not in the plan.
Again, I don't have all of the information with me tonight about every alternative that was vetted, but I do
I'm not asking
understand.
about. I just want to know why you dismissed our plan, our request.
What I'm saying is that your alternative that was proposed was reviewed by the design team and by our TPM team. And this was the design alternative that was found to be the one that's feasible. I can't cite to you tonight every reason why the proposal that the board made wasn't found feasible. I don't have that at this point, but it was carefully considered. There were many, many months spent on looking at alternatives for the operation of the rotary for cyclists and for the vehicles. I don't have every iota with me this evening about why what the board proposed was not determined to be the best alternative.
Well, we're not looking for every iota. We would just like, and if you can't do it tonight, I totally understand. Can you please get back to us and tell us why you can't accede to what we requested?
We will.
Major reasons. We don't need every iota. One or two.
I understand
Why it's impossible.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank
and
you.
we did look at all of them, including.
I know you did, and we'd like to know why you dismissed.
Yeah,
it.
just give us some detail. It can be in a private conversation or private communication. That's fine.
Got it. Got it.
Thank you.
I
Thank you.
haven't finished.
Roberta.
Andrew, I haven't finished.
You're not
Andrew?
finished?
No, I'm not finished. My one question, it took a lot of time, and I have one other question. Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. The bike lane, which goes along, I was really glad to hear that the Esplanade will not be interrupted because it is reputed to be the most used bike lane in North America. And a lot of commuters, cyclists use it. But right now, the legal bike lane goes at the western edge of the rotunda. I assume that when construction starts, that will have to be shut down. So I'm wondering, where will the cyclists be rerouted and when will that happen?
Greg, can you speak to that?
There is a plan that we're currently working through with the contractor. I think the details of it are premature to present it to the community because we have some concerns with it and we're working through it. But we wanted to get to you because you're going to see vehicles, construction activities out in the field, but those activities are not going to impact those ramps at this stage. We owe you information on that, and we're working with the contractor on finding the best solution to that. I know Tom has been working with the contractor and might be able to provide a little bit more detail.
Ken, I think you're referring to what everyone's commonly called the Rosenthal bypass.
Yes.
Yes, I think just to put it in context, I wanted to make sure I understood we were speaking about the same thing. I do think there's a period of time where the determination was made that it would have to close because it was going to conflict with contractor access into the site. But as Greg says, that is not happening in the near term. And I think we're trying to work with the contractor to find a way to figure that out. Tom, do you have more details on that are worth sharing this evening?
So eventually that is going to happen. The bikes are going to have to be shifted down to the Esplanade for construction. That's going to happen, in the future, a couple months into the future. We have some issues to work out with that, but it's inevitable for the bikes to be able to continue across up and over the rotunda when intense construction starts or gets underway. So
that could be April or May, conceivably.
Yes, it could be.
Okay.
That it, Ken?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Roberta.
Thank you so much. Janine, it's nice to see you again.
I wish we were all together.
I know, without masks. So a couple of points have already been made, but I'm glad that the two ball fields will be free from everything that be used. The signage, I think, is very important, and I'm assuming there will be good signage during construction as to where paths are and which routes to take for people, both pedestrians and bike riders coming into the coming in. And I one of my comments was about the bus. It would be nice if the bus, since it's going down to 72nd Street, could make at least one or two stops en route. I know when the M72 bus was rerouted during construction of Riverside South, that transit was able to change some of the stops. So, if they can do that again, I know that's out of your range. And any signage, I think, is so key. And I appreciate the problem with the bike lane. I know you and I spent many long hours discussing rerouting it and figuring out how to do it. It's possible over the next 2 years that new ways of dealing with it may come up and that certain changes could be made. And I would hope that you guys, will be looking at that. When the Esplanade is used for biking, the big problem we had, and this is more directed to parks, was that many of the bike riders are not respective of pedestrians and children. So I hope there will be major signage during the period when the Helen Rosenthal bike lane is not used and the Esplanade is used, because there have been some major accidents on the Esplanade with pedestrians. And that's more directed at parks than it DOT.
Well, I think, Roberta, so just a couple of things just to tease that apart a little bit. One of the things we didn't spend a lot of time on tonight is what Caitlin will be doing. And she and Waskar in particular have spent a lot of time on our team here developing what I envision will be a series of one-pagers that will address individual topics. We anticipate doing an entire one-pager on the Americans with Disabilities ramp, and then doing another entire one-pager on the plaza and what the renderings and what the plaza will look like. I think it might have been Ken that spoke about the turtles. We're also planning to do another entire one pager on construction access in and out of the rotunda, signage, paths, how to find your way around. And those I envision kind of building out to a portfolio of one pagers on the project, instead of kind of taking the approach that we've done in the past, where we simply send you a monthly newsletter that says, you know, we dug a hole here, we put a wire over there. We thought that this would speak more to the complexity of this major project, to have a series of these topical one pagers addressing various design elements of the project. And Caitlin and Waskar have been working on them already for some time. You probably have already received the overall one pager that we have on the Rotunda project itself. And Caitlin has been out handing out the one pager on the bus layover relocations. If anybody has additional content subject titles, we'd like to see a one pager on this, or we'd like to see a one pager on that. We're very happy to add that content onto this portfolio of design items that we're building out. So that's one thing I did want to mention. I also wanted to mention that for sure, our colleague John Herold is on the call, and he is very concerned, as is everyone else in parks, about the time period when the bikes have to be on the Esplanade. And they've been, big advocates for dealing with separating bikes and peds and trying to keep the Esplanade as safe as possible. It's always in the conversations we have. And in particular, John is one that carries that message all the time. And so, for a period of time that we will try to keep as limited as possible, there's just no other way to have the cyclists moving through the deck while we're replacing it. So that is a concern, and John is right there.
We appreciate that, and we appreciate John and the Riverside Park Department. They really work hard with us. I just wanted to bring it up. And
no, that's great. And we will let
pagers. I can't speak for the board, but I'm sure that Max and Michelle are on this call, that we will post your one pagers on our website. And I'm sure our local electeds will also send out the one pagers with their newsletters.
Absolutely. And just the last thing was about the buses again. We'll be in touch with Transit tomorrow to share that concern with them.
Thank you.
So much, Roberta. I'm here.
I have some other folks to call on, but just let me ask one quick question. How far geographically north and east and south from 79th Street Rotunda will signage be posted on West Side streets to alert motorists to avoid that this is closed?
We have an entire maintenance and protection plan scheme of signs. I don't have it with me. I don't want to speak to specific locations and where every sign is going to be, but it's pretty extensive. And again, just realize that the regular ramps that the public uses on and off the highway are not being affected by this project.
I was talking about for motorists, but yes, thank you.
Yeah, yes.
Great. Doug Kleiman, and then Michelle Parker, and then Rich Robbins.
Thank you. And at the risk of being redundant, I was at the meetings years ago, and it is good to see everybody here. I am looking at the rotunda and the bike lane, and I am fearful. I see conflict between vehicles that are coming off of the highway at 50 plus miles an hour. And even though you have a calming effect there, I remember some of our conversation about the fact that this was built, many years ago with Robert Moses, and the cars weren't as wide, and we have to address the articulated bus turnaround. But I just see conflict here, and there must be a better way. I personally would not want to ride my bike near there. I remember talking about you call them rumble sticks, or just signs that are going to warn people to slow down. I mean, they're literally going into a bike lane from a highway. I know we talked about things that unfortunately seem to be unattainable, which was to have a dedicated bike lane that was not part of this at all and reroute it. I realized that was an enormous an expense and perhaps not possible, but I just want to be on the record for saying that I am very worried
conflict here, and I hope that we put some good minds to figuring this out. It's a beautiful project. I'm very excited about it, but we certainly want to make sure that we don't have any deaths or injuries. And I see
safety has to be a part of this.
Well, it has to be the number one thing beyond anything else. Thank you.
Thank you. Michelle.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. This looks like a great project. I just want to make sure I got the bus routing issue cleared up. Andrew, you said there'll be another meet and greet about the.
Yes, we're going to ask the bus division to come to a transportation committee meeting and discuss the need for additional stops. To have the bus go all the way down south to 72nd and not stop anywhere is ridiculous.
But and furthermore, I see if we could go to page 15, please, that bus stop at 79th Street on the relocated bus stop at 79th between West
the
End
northeast
and Broadway.
corner.
Yeah, I can't see it making left-hand turns without a lot of problems.
I agree.
Yeah, full disclosure, I live a block up on 80th and West End and have for 45 years. And I can't see that this will help. We're going to have more traffic on West End. And and that's a bump out too. That sidewalk is now bumped out. So there's less area for buses to stop. So they'd have to stop before the corner and then get to the corner and make a left. I agree with you, Andrew. There's a lot of issues with a left-hand turn on two-way
Typically,
streets.
there would be a lot of traffic continuing west on 79th Street, and the bus would have a lot of trouble pulling out and making the turn. But if everybody understands that there's nowhere to go, you can't get to the highway, there may be less traffic on 79th, and the bus may have less of an issue. So we got to discuss this with buses.
Okay, so
absolutely.
I look forward to being part of that discussion.
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you,
Sure.
everybody.
So again, Andrew, just from our point of view, I think the expression, we don't have a horse in this race.
Sure.
Whatever transit says, we will get the right signs installed and we will, do the messaging.
That's good, because horses leave poop and buses don't. Okay, so I believe, Rich, you were next.
Yeah, thank you. And if we could go back to the other slide, one thing you said that really scares me is that the life cycle of flexible delineators isn't long. And because the flexible delineators are separating moving motor vehicles from bikes, I'd rather their life cycle be short than cyclists. And that's a big cause for alarm for me. Also, the design seems very dependent on paint, and paint, first of all, doesn't provide protection, and second of all, fades very quickly, especially in such a heavily trafficked area. So this again causes great concern for me. I'm also worried that we spent a lot of time on the resolution, and you said it was carefully considered, but that our suggestions were not included. And I'm wondering if there's any reason for hope that they would be moving forward if they weren't in the past, and if there's any point in or even going through this process. I also want to echo what Andrew and others said about concerns about the road closures. We already know that 79th and Riverside is one of the worst intersections in the district. Also 96 and 95th are really bad intersections, especially at West End. And what Roberta said about signage, there's going to be a lot of confusion about what road changes there are. There also will be a lot of construction vehicles going in and out of 79th Street. So I'm really worried that we're just going to be causing more problems in areas that are already really bad. And signage is critical. We also need to, and signage like blocks away to alert drivers where they can and can't turn and what roads are and are not open. Also, in terms of cyclists on the bypass, and for one, I've heard that there are more crashes on the bypass than there were the old route. But also we I think close to unanimously passed a resolution calling for bikes to go 10 miles per hour throughout the park. And I think that's going to be more critical than ever. And I know that wasn't, we got a lot of pushback, but that's something hopefully parks can push for. And if it requires a state law change, whatever it is, we need bikes to slow down. But I'm concerned about the bypass, especially because it's such a steep hill that allows bikes to speed up way too fast. So thank you.
Thank you. Did you want to respond?
I simply wanted to again go back to this thing about the signage. There's always a maintenance and protection of signage plan that's put out. There'll be a tremendous number of signs throughout the community. And frequently, as construction starts, it become very clear that additional signs need to be installed, and signs need to move, and signs need to be adjusted. And we will be doing all of that.
That's great. And your earlier comment about looking at changing the timing of various signals, I think is going to be very important to making 95th, 96th in the West End area safe, because there's going to be bedlam up there, as you can well imagine, with 79th Street entrance and exits closed. That's for 2 years or whatever. And so
again, that just be clear. I think what we were saying is that the exit ramp, the southbound exit ramp, would be closed for 60 days.
60 days. Oh,
the traffic
okay.
will be pulled off at 96th Street for 60 days. And again, all of the regular, I want to call them regular ramps, the ramps that most folks use on and off, will not be affected other than for that southbound ramp for that 60 days. The only ramps that are being closed are the ones that we call the jug handle. In this image, you can actually see it far up there in the upper right. If you're traveling northbound, that ramp only puts you back into the rotary. And so those ramps have very, very low volume use.
Absolutely. That's for westbound 79th Street from that point. So
you can't go back eastbound from there.
Right. You can't get to New Jersey from there. Okay. Anybody else before we thank our guests for their excellent presentation?
I think
and we will obviously
her hand
be following up.
And then I'd like to ask one quick question. Clary?
Sure.
My friend Clary?
Yes, hi, Andrew, am I called on?
Sure, sure.
Okay. Yeah, I have a follow-up to something that Mark Diller asked about. We don't have a slide on it tonight or a presentation tonight, but it concerns the design of the, particularly the parks office facility at the pedestrian plaza level. I was concerned about Janine's answer. As when we did our resolution, I mean, mostly we thought the preservation aspects of the project were terrific, but we did ask to have a change in the color of the metalwork, as I recall, on the doors to that park facility, from a silvery to a bronzish thing, bronzish color. And I believe we also asked you guys to look at some kind of motif on those doors that would modify their strictness and maybe make reference to the fountain or the turtles or something in front. Janine, I think what you said in answer to Mark's question is what we saw is what we're getting. And so my question is, did you make the changes that we discussed that you seemed, at least in terms of the color, I think committed to, but they weren't in what we saw, they weren't in the drawings. What changes have been made to the detail in that area of those doors of the park office facility following the discussions we had about that and our resolutions? I think
so.
The second one.
So again, Greg and I both went to the landmarks or was it Nick? Greg, were you there too, or was it Nick Roberts?
We all were there.
We went to landmarks with Nick Pedinati, who's our DOT agency liaison, and I believe the color changes were incorporated that were asked for. I mean, we almost went in there with a Pantone chart of what the request was, because I believe there was a concern. Landmarks is so careful with these that there was a concern about two different shades of bronze. One, I think, had to do with the framework of the doors into the office, and the other one was for another element of the park office. And so they needed to be sure exactly what colors were being called out. So I know that was discussed deeply. In terms of images, on the doors. I don't recall that part of it. I know there was a specific request, and I've actually thought about this many times about protecting the birds. And that, I believe, has now been passed as a city law.
Yeah, the bird glass.
That this has to be done. And I
Right.
actually was quite satisfied when that happened. I said, wow, we were ahead of the game in incorporating this into this design based upon your input to be sure that that was done. So I know that protective film was installed. I don't think the doors have a specific pattern. But again, what I'd like to say is, and again, I think the board received a copy of the LPC final resolution.
I don't think if we did, it wasn't distributed.
Okay,
I believe we did. I don't know that it was distributed.
So we can certainly get that back and take a look at that particular individual element to answer the question for you. But this was one of the most intense parts of the review with LPC. If you recall, there's a small vent stack that comes out that has, and Landmarks had us modify the shape of that so that I think originally it was square. They wanted us to revise it to something cylindrical so that it was more in harmony with the design. I mean, there was a tremendous amount of careful detail in that. And so we can get that whole package back to you.
Yeah, just to conclude on my question on this, it would be great if we could see whatever changes were made, either initiated by you or brought on by LPC from the drawings that we saw, because there were a number of things. There was the visibility of the door bar that
yes,
other smallish things too. So it'd be great to see what the changes were.
It's all there. We'll get that to you.
I think we have Mark, and then I'll make a quick comment.
Mark, I
because
think.
this is going over a bit over, so we'll try to wrap
sorry.
it up.
So I just wanted to connect the dots on something that we heard, I think, at full board recently, which was the need for additional lighting at the corner of 96th Street and West End Avenue. And I would throw in, while we're at it, 95th Street and West End Avenue, because of the additional volume that's going to go their way from the results of this project. Now would be a good time to move that forward. So if we can somehow join this issue with that one, that would be a smart thing for us to do.
Thank you. That makes perfect sense. And Janine, would it be fair to say that as we move forward, some of the individual details like style and the bike access and the bus routes and additional stops and signage, all of that can be also heard at the obvious committees for those issues?
Of course, we're all about communication, and that's why we're here. I have to leave this in terms of logistics of this with Colleen. Borough Commissioner's offices do help us with scheduling that. And again, I'm available, and basically also Caitlin is available to address a lot of these. And I think as we prepare this portfolio of one-pagers that will include a lot of these design details in more depth, then that'll increase everybody's familiarity with something that I know we all looked at. I believe the first meeting I went on this was probably like in 16 or something. So it's a fair assessment that a lot of this, we all remember it in the macro details, but I think a lot of the final details probably have slipped away for all of us, and everyone will get re-immersed in exactly what the final plan set looks like.
Great. So Howard and
I just wanted to say one quick thing. Well, actually, two quick things. First, again, I look forward to hearing why we had a unanimous resolution to protect the cyclists. You are able to protect the birds, I noticed. You talked about bird glass. Why human beings living on the Upper West Side have less protection than the birds. But I look forward to hearing about that. I want to make another point in that I drive this probably twice a week. And when I come off in my car south to go around the circle, I go incredibly slowly because of the massive potholes. It really slows me down. Once this is all clean, smooth, and new, there is going to be a temptation to just shoot right through, because those potholes, I notice, not only slow me down, they slow everyone down. So again, our community board unanimously requested some kind of physical rumble sticks or something to slow the traffic down. As several of us said tonight, this is a matter of life and death. we implore you to listen to the unanimous voice of the community board and try to do something. I have to believe when over $100 million is being spent on this, you can come up with a bump or something to make sure people don't die.
We've heard you.
Good.
Thank you very much. Thanks. And Colleen, I believe you were going to, while you're here, address the issue of the traffic lights being covered in Central Park. I believe Parks Committee wanted to hear that as well.
Sure. Hey, Andrew. Hey, everyone. We are actually upgrading those lights in Central Park. That's what I'm told. The lights are not operational, and I did reach out to our street lighting division to get some more information because Susan had sent me an email on this. I'm told that the contractor is awaiting a shipment of controllers from the manufacturer. So once that's received, the lights are going to be functional. I promise to get back to you no later by this Friday, Susan and team, with more information about this, but I'm told it's a regrade of the traffic signals in the Central Park area there.
Okay.
Can I just, hello? Can I just ask?
Sure, go ahead, Susan.
Go ahead, Susan. Why are they being up? What's happening, Colleen?
Well, I think what it is that, you know, they wanted to, you know, change the signals for a long time. And I think the timing of this is, you know, being, you know, the timing of it is, it's perfect to do so. I think it has to go back with, you know, the configuration of the signals, and they've decided to just make the improvements overall in general. And again, as soon as I get more information from them in terms of what improvements are going to be made as part of the signals, I'll share that with the community board.
Colleen, is there an attempt, what those signals are a remnant of when there were cars in the park? They were set up for vehicular traffic. Is there any effort being made to have a different set of signaling, which is more beneficial for the current users? Again, that was set up for vehicles and there are no vehicles. So are you just replicating the system that was set up for vehicles, or is there some attempt to design something for the current users?
I think it's an attempt to design for the current use, not for vehicles. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Sorry, can we remove this from the screen, this presentation, please? Thank you.
And again, I promise to get back to you with more information Friday, okay?
Oh, Colleen, excuse me, with all due respect, the vehicles might not be there, but the pedestrians still are. So Howard, it's really dangerous to cross the roads.
I'm saying something that would be beneficial for pedestrians, Susan. That's what I'm saying. It's designed for vehicles. The vehicles aren't there, so they can increase safety for pedestrians. That's the goal.
It depends how you define vehicles, because bicycles coming at me, and including e-bikes coming at me when I'm trying to cross the paths, is really dangerous. So I'm concerned about what's behind this. And Colleen, I'd love to hear more about this. Thank you so much for your
goal being to increase safety.
Yes, agreed. Thank you so much, Colleen. I really appreciate it.
I have my hand up.
Oh, Ken, and then Barbara.
Yeah, I also wanted to ask about this. I understand that it's, you know, you're not taking into account cars in the park, but the kind of lights that have been put in the structures are better suited for a suburban boulevard. And they're actually higher than the current ones, which means they're harder for a cyclist to see. The reason that you put lights up high is because you're putting them in there for vehicles that are going 30, 40, 50 miles an hour, and they need a lot of braking time, and they need a lot of advance warning. Cyclists don't need that, going 10, 15 miles an hour. And so once you get up, as a cyclist gets up to the light, it's way up above his or her head. And sometimes you're not even going to know it's there. So I would really like to know who is asking for this. Also, how much money is being spent on it. And some of these lights are in the northern part of the park where there's hardly any crossing traffic on the crosswalks. I'd be surprised if you get double figures during an entire day.
Could I just be rudely interrupt and say I'd like to let my team go, if that's okay with everybody?
Oh, sure.
Yes, you've been kind enough to stay so long. I really appreciate it.
Quite all right. I hope to
Thank-
see you all in person very soon.
Thank you for the
That'd be nice. Thank
presentation.
you.
It was excellent.
Thank you
It
so
was
much.
great.
Good night, everybody.
Good
Good
night.
night.
Jane, thanks so
Thanks.
much.
So Colleen, will you be telling us
Colleen, you're muted.
why this is happening and how much money is being spent on this to basically just reinforce car infrastructure?
Sorry, Ken, I'm not sure, if your analysis is correct in terms of height of signals with, visibility for motorists as opposed to cyclists. I'm not sure about that. And again, I don't have much information that I can tell you in terms of what the cost is. As soon as I get that, I will share that with the community board.
So is Ken correct that they're being placed at a much higher elevation though? Is that correct?
Again, I don't know because I'm not a signal expert, and I would think, that the signals are placed in such a way where it is visible to both cyclists and motorists. I don't see the point in raising a signal that would not be at equal where, motorists and cyclists would not be able to see that.
I was just there today. They're significantly higher.
Okay, I'll
All
find
right,
out.
we'll try to get some more info.
Yes.
Barbara?
I have a lot of concerns about this also. And, Colleen, I've contacted you numerous times about this because the bikes often don't stop for the lights now when the lights are red. They just go right through. So I'm afraid that they're going to put in a flashing yellow or something like that and just ask people to look. And it's going to be very dangerous for pedestrians, as it certainly is right now.
And I will get you more information, Barbara. And I did respond to you as well.
Susan?
What Barbara said, exactly. I mean, seriously, Ken, excuse me, to all my colleagues in the board, I'm in the park a lot, and there are a lot of pedestrians who rely on the lights to let us cross safely, and it's already a game of Frogger because the bikers don't stop at the lights. They view it as an optional situation. It's just very upsetting. So Colleen, I look forward to getting more information about this. And I agree with Ken oddly that some money has been spent here. I'd like to know why and what's going on. Thank you so much. I look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Irena, thank you. Irena?
Yeah, I think Susan kind of touched on it, Colleen. I don't want to shoot the messenger. And I want to thank you for inviting your colleagues from DOT here tonight for that excellent presentation. But I do think it's important for all of us to know exactly what the plan is in Central Park with the lights. I live very close to the park. I'm in there all the time. I'm actually a member of the Central Park Conservancy Board of Trustees. This is the first time I'm hearing about it. And frankly, it is virtually impossible to cross the drives. So it would be really useful and helpful to all of us and the constituents that use the park, as well as residents and families who border the park, to know what the plan is with the lights, so that we can have an opportunity to give some input on it before everything is finished, particularly if there's an attempt to remove traffic lights. I don't subscribe to this idea, because cars are not in the park, that we should not have a red and a green stoplights. I just don't subscribe to that. And I think replacing them, and I know, Colleen, this might not be the plan, but replacing them with yellow flashing lights is a prescription for disaster. Because if you think that what happens now is that at least if a pedestrian is crossing the drive and the light is red and a cyclist mows them down, they have some legal recourse. Having something some flashing light that most New Yorkers don't even understand what that means is really going to be problematic from a legal standpoint. So yeah. I hope we have an opportunity to really understand exactly what's happening in the park with the lights, because right now it's a disaster.
And I hope we are not doing what you just mentioned, removing the lights and put flashing. I just hope that's not the case. Okay, but I will definitely get more information and take.
Thank you, Colleen.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Andrew, I have another.
Go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, I realize we don't want to litigate this right now, but there are 47 lights in the park. This is a recreational space now. And there are some places which I really hope DOT and the Conservancy, the Parks Department will look at, where there are no lights, and it's a fairly high traffic crossing, such as 85th on the West Drive. And cyclists and pedestrians seem to be negotiating it quite well without incident. In fact, I think that what happens is lights provide a false sense of security for both cyclists and pedestrians. And I think something like, what's that, 85th on the West Drive would do much better.
No.
So I hope that you all are looking at the experiences at an intersection like that, rather than just going on what you think is a good thing to do.
Thanks, Ken. Rich Robbins? Rich, your hand is up.
Yep. I'm sorry, I was in the other room. I just want to mention, I'm sorry. So as far as the lights, I tried going around the park. I've mentioned this, stopping at every light. And often there are red lights when there are no pedestrians anywhere in sight. And there are so many lights that you could be riding a bike and every other minute you're stopping at a light, waiting for a long time when there are no pedestrians, which I think conditions riders to ignore the lights. And so, definitely we need to make sure that there aren't conflicts between pedestrians and cyclists, and that pedestrians have a safe way of crossing the loop. But if you make it so that cyclists are stopping every other minute at a light, waiting for a long time when there are no pedestrians, and then going until the next light, you're just conditioning the cyclist not to stop, which doesn't serve any purpose and is counterproductive. So I think we need to, and I encourage everyone to do that, just hop on a bike and ride around the loop and just see what it's like to stop at every light. But we need to make sure that the lights make sense and that they're protecting pedestrians, when I don't think that they always are. So thank you.
Thanks, Rich. Susan, and then we'll try to wrap this up.
Okay, one last comment. A traffic light is a traffic light. Even my 2-year-old grandson knows to stop at a red light. So that's my comment. Just like, when there's a light, you stop. And whether there's no one coming or not, you just stop. Thank you very much.
I think everyone had in mind that we have to think this through carefully and see if there's something we could do to make it safer. We just shouldn't simply replicate what we have for vehicles. We should give some thought to, if it's possible, now that vehicles are out of the park, to come up with a system that's safer for everyone. I don't think
without suburbanizing Central Park.
Turning it over to cyclists.
It's fair. The park is for everyone. Are we ready to go to our next
yes.
topic?
Is anybody from Whizfish present?
Hi, yes, this is Anna Driscoll from Whizfish. Hi, everyone.
Hi. So you are looking for a no standing anytime zone in front of 341-345?
141-145, yes. West 108.
Oh, 141, that's right, of course. Wouldn't be the Riverside block. It's Columbus Amsterdam block of West 108, right?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, and it is, what is it now? Regular parking?
So here, I'll share my screen here so I can show you a bit more of the context. There. Is that showing up?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, great. So as I said, my name is Anna Driscoll. I'm a project manager for real estate development at the Westside Federation for Senior and Supportive Housing, which I'm sure you all know as Whizfish. And so this is a project that I imagine a lot of you are pretty familiar with. This is Whizfish at West 108, which is on this block here, West 108 between Amsterdam and Columbus. And this building has been presented in the past to CB7 over the years as we went through the ULERT process. And we're really excited to share that the building has now been completed and people are starting to move in. And so here's just a photo to show the completed building. So this building offers 199 units of affordable housing, mostly for seniors and some for families as well. And then on this side of the building here is the new location of our Valley Lodge shelter, which has operated on the same block since the 80s, and now we'll be moving into this newly constructed building with 18 more beds than it had before. And the building also has parking for the Central Park Medical Unit. It has a bookable community room that anyone in the neighborhood can use for meetings. There's also a federally qualified health center that's operated by the Institute for Family Health, and also a new comfort station, a public restroom in this adjacent playground over here. And here's just a few more pictures of the interior. This is the lobby, an example of one of the apartments, and the dining room. And so this is just a quick drawing to show where this no standing zone is located. It's this box in blue right here, and it's a width of 16 feet. And so this 16-foot zone is right between, these two doors that are kind of the main entrance to the building for our residents. So as I said, most of the residents are low income or formerly homeless seniors or low income families, along with seniors who are in this transitional shelter, Valley Lodge. And so because this is a sensitive population, they're frequently accessing Access-a-Ride and other transportation to get to the healthcare services they need and other social services in the community. So we really find at our buildings across the Upper West Side and in the South Bronx as well, that it's important to have space on the block so that rides can pull in and bring our seniors where they need to go, since that happens so frequently. So that's just a picture here of sort of what the block looks like. So these are the entrance doors. So it's basically this zone like right here. And you can see that there's regular parking kind of along the rest of the block as well.
So we're talking about from the hydrant.
Oh, sorry, I'll go back here.
Go back, yeah. So you're talking about just east of the hydrant to the big tree, basically?
Basically, yeah. Let's take a quick look back here. So yeah, here's this tree. So it's basically just a little bit west of the tree and then going just past that first door.
Right. Let me ask you this.
Sure.
If this space is granted and somebody who is not eligible to pull in pulls in, will you have any personnel on hand? Or like how will somebody just not disobey it and pull in and do what they want to do in the building and not be the one that the space is for, basically?
Yeah, it's a good question.
Is there anyone there to supervise by any chance?
Yeah, so our buildings, including this one, all have 24-hour security. We have front desk staff who are at the building all the time. And we also have a pretty sizable staff of our building manager, superintendent, and porters. So there are lots of folks around who are, supervising residents and monitoring what's going on in the building and, have cameras and some eyes on the street. So our staff would be responsible for making sure that doesn't happen.
That's great. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? By the way, was notice of this posted by you anywhere in the neighborhood?
Notice of this no standing zone?
Yeah.
I don't believe it has yet. So essentially, we were approved by the DOT in late December for this no standing zone. However, since it is categorized as a quality of life issue, it's something that actually requires the community board's approval before we can get that sort of final DOT approval. So yeah, if it would be helpful to post notices of this, I think that would be great. And it's probably something we could do, but we haven't done so yet because we wanted to come to you first.
Sure. Howard, anybody have any questions?
No.
Yeah, my hand's up.
I'm sorry. I
Four of
was
us
watching
have
the
our
picture.
four
There
of
are
us have our
several
hands
hands
raised.
up, Andrew.
Okay, let's do it. I see Irena and then Jay, and then Ira's hand is up and Ken's hand is up.
Thank you. Thank you, Anna. Thank you for coming. Wishfish has been a neighbor for many, 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 many years, probably 4 or 5 decades by now. Do you have other loading zones in front of your other properties on the Upper West Side?
We do have some others, yeah, on the Upper West Side and in the Bronx as well. I don't know the exact list of what those are, but it is pretty common at our buildings that we need some sort of loading space for our residents since we serve almost exclusively seniors.
And that was my second question. Is this primarily for residents? This is not being used for other kinds, like, I just want to make sure that people who employees of Wishfish or other people, when it's not being used for Access-a-Ride, this is not going to become sort of a private space for anyone that needs a parking going in and out of Wishfish. This is specifically for Access-a-Ride and transportation for older citizens, right?
Right, absolutely. And it is something that we find is used so frequently since, it is a large building. There are a lot of seniors living here and all sorts of places they need to go, appointments and services. So we do find that it's used quite actively. And so it would not be used for any other purpose.
And just last question, how many parking spaces will this neighborhood be losing?
Hey,
So roughly, is it 1 or 2? It can't be more than.
It's 2, isn't it? 8 feet each?
It looks about 2.
Yeah.
Oh, I was saying no. Okay, but you don't know, Anna.
So it's Colleen from DOT. When we do grant these requests, it's usually 1 parking space we give.
Got it. And there will be, so Colleen, if it's approved, the signage would go up that says no load, saying no parking. The requisite signage will go in, right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
16 feet is 1 space? Yikes. That's a big vehicle. Okay, let's see. We also have Jay's hand is up. And then Ira.
Yeah, first of all, something like this where you're taking away public space, coming to the community board before you give public notice is putting the cart before the horse. This should have been noticed. Notices should have been posted in the area that we were having this meeting and considering this so that the public, the residents, the proximate residents in the area had a voice. So in my opinion, we shouldn't vote on this. Tonight, the notices should be posted. The public should have the opportunity, the neighbors, to come in and comment. That's my first observation. Secondly, and I don't know if I'm right on this, but isn't there a prohibition of parking within 15 feet either side of a fire hydrant? Does anybody know? Colleen? Is Colleen still here?
She is.
I'm sorry, Jay, what was your question? I was muted.
My question is, isn't there a prohibition against parking within 15 feet of a fire hydrant?
Well, you shouldn't be. You should be 15 feet away from a fire hydrant. Yes, correct.
Okay, well, where that fire hydrant is, the area of 15 feet on either side of it should always be vacant. So why do we even need this at all? The fire hydrant's going to stay there, I assume.
Yeah, the hydrant that most definitely will stay there. I mean, we will
So
come
you
out there.
you have a 30-foot buffer. You have 15 feet on either side of the hydrant where nobody can park.
Okay, although the fire hydrant is there, I mean, we would come out there and we would survey the site to determine where we can install the signage. We would make sure it doesn't conflict with the footage of the hydrant.
Well, if you're talking about, okay, you're talking about 16 feet versus 15 feet. It just, it seems to me it's just not.
Jay, I think
necessary.
Colleen is saying that after they come out and see where the 15 feet point to the east of the hydrant, where it ends, that's where they would grant the 16 feet.
So you'd actually have empty space of 30 feet or
Yes.
31 feet.
But of course, you're not supposed to use a hydrant space for these kinds of things.
Well, if you're talking about drop off and pickup only, it just seems to me
It
that
should
you
work.
You don't have to, eliminate another parking space. Anyway, but that's, again, I don't think we should be voting on this without a chance for the neighbors to weigh in on it, or the people that do drop off and pick up, etc. Public notice needs to be given in advance.
Thanks, Jay. Ken and then Ira.
Okay. Yeah, well, for one thing, Jay, you said we're taking away public space. This is
No,
not.
I didn't.
You did. You go back to the tape. You did say that.
I said a parking space.
You said public space.
Okay. Parking space is public space.
Okay, but so is a place to drop off people with disabilities. And they're as much a member of the public as somebody who wants to
I agree,
store
but
their car.
Space is there.
Okay, so what we're doing is we're repurposing public space. I wanted to ask Anne, is time of the essence for you? Do you need a resolution from us quickly on this?
So since we already have this DOT approval for the zone, I know that, once we go to this transportation committee, we would then go to the full board to confirm. But once we have done that, we are looking forward to getting these signs installed promptly, because we are very actively moving in new residents. So the population is growing at this building. We're also going to be moving in the Valley Lodge shelter clients pretty soon, within the next month or so. So that will also be increasing the population who will be needing some of these services and this access to transportation. So yes, we are very much hoping to install these signs soon.
And are cars currently parked where you need to pull over?
Right now, as you can sort of see, and I guess I don't have that picture up anymore, but yes, there's pretty much cars up and down that row. This was, of course, an active construction site for the past few years. So, there was already not much parking going on this street while we were building this building, but at the moment, there is space for cars to park along the street.
So sometimes when an accessoride comes by, it can't pull to the curb? Is that what you're saying?
I don't know for sure whether that situation has come up yet, because as I said, we're kind of actively growing the population now, but I imagine it could be an issue if we didn't have this zone, especially as we start getting more people and accessoride starts coming more often.
And some of the people have disabilities, and would it be a hardship for them if they had to disembark in the middle of the street?
Absolutely. Yeah. A lot of our residents do have disabilities, whether mental or physical, need various, ADA compliance, in their units, or issues with vision, hearing, and mobility. So yeah, I think that would be pretty difficult for this population.
So I think if any notice is required, it could be dealt with a full board vote.
Okay.
That would mean, that would mean that Anne would have to put the notices up and state that the vote will be taken, the first Tuesday in March, I guess.
Right.
Anne, are you in a position to be able to do that?
I guess I would want to know a bit more logistically, and if we were going to provide notice of, I guess, how widespread that would need to be. Would it just be like a sign on that block itself for people who are going by, or what would that look like?
Yeah, I'm guessing it would be, the corners and the middle of that block, not surrounding blocks.
Yeah, I'm sure we could do that.
Let me ask you this, if I could. If somebody is, if this space is granted and somebody's unloading a passenger and someone else needs to be unloaded, will they wait? Will they use the hydrant, or will they double park? Do you have any inkling of what you're telling your customers to do?
I don't know exactly. I could ask some of our building management staff, and since they're more familiar on the ground with what that looks like. My assumption is that they wouldn't block the hydrant, and perhaps they would just wait to move into the space, but I don't know exactly what that would look like.
Okay. Ira, I think you were next.
Okay, two things. I'm going to talk once as a parent at the largest middle school in our district. This is a school bus route. So we actually want to move traffic down this street. The space is needed to move the school bus traffic. But more importantly, many of you may remember me from previous appearances where I had to disqualify myself time and time and time and time again, along with other people on this screen and other people on this community board who are not on this screen. I am no longer bound by that conflict of interest, as I no longer work in the role that I worked in for 10 years prior to that. So I just want to give you a couple of facts on cars. Cars are not 16 feet long. That is the actual object of the car. A parallel parking space is actually significantly longer. So it requires at least 20 feet. 8 foot is a perpendicular parking space. We do not do perpendicular parking. So I would suggest that the spot actually be longer than the 20 feet, because I'll give you a very coherent fact about this building. There are approximately 120 supportive housing units. There's somebody here who can quote the number more precisely than me, because I think the number was floating a little bit as to how many were going to be supportive.
But you're right, it's 119.
What?
You're correct, it's 119.
Right, but there are also some of the affordable studios that were considered possible for people who might be in similar settings. But of those 120, 60 of them had roll-in showers. Okay, roll-in showers means you're in a wheelchair. So you actually have to provide for the concept that there may well be 60 people in this building who are with that level of physical challenge, either a wheelchair, a walker, or something like that. So I think you have to have the ability to bring in a wheelchair accessible van that can bring them in. That's actually a little bit larger than this. Now, in a more general sense, I've done supportive housing across the city for many, many different providers. And I continue to do that in a very, very different setting now on the government side. Every one of these facilities has the ability to have a van access. This is no exception. And if you look at least the new buildings, if you look at Red Oak, there's a whole court that they can do off the street. And I believe they have space on 106, if I'm right, or am I not right, children? Okay, so this is not an unusual request. When you go to the outer boroughs, you can actually do easy parking spaces and supportive housing uses where there are fewer people than this, which is the 115 supportive and the 110. We're talking 250 or so people here who have at least over 50 status and some level of being physically challenged. 250 people, one spot is really, I'm surprised they're not asking for more, but they're not asking for more. They're asking for one spot. And I think the spot needs to be a bit bigger to actually accommodate what their real needs are. I'm not talking as an advocate for wishes. I'm talking to somebody who has spent, the last 15 or 20 years of their lives, at the very least, doing supportive housing, doing senior housing. And I did some projects much earlier. So I think the spot actually needs to be more generous. You're right that it actually needs to be a little further away from the fire hydrant, but it is certainly essential to the operations of this or any other similar building. And that's my 2 cents.
Okay,
And
the
Nancy-
request is for 16 feet, Ira.
I understand. I would really suggest, and not in deference to Jay's comment, but I think you need to go back and revise your request
And
to
this
be
is Colleen,
consistent with the kind of vehicle that you actually will use. And 16 foot is simply not a parallel parking space dimension. You can't maneuver a vehicle in 16 feet.
But if
Because
you're
the
pulling
vehicle
in
itself-
via the hydrant where there should be no vehicle, you can pull right in, right?
Right, but basically what you're going to get in your 16 feet is a Subaru Outback. Trust me, I got one. So,
And
Okay.
it's
Colleen?
it's Colleen from DOT. I mean, the parking space dimension, and again, it's one parking space we would allocate. It's between 8.5 to 9 feet wide.
you're talking width.
Yeah, width,
That's
correct.
the width from the curb, not the
That's
parallel
correct.
dimension. The 16
Right.
feet is not a parallel dimension.
Parallel dimension,
You can
correct.
go, okay, it's not a parallel, it's a parallel dimension for a vehicle, not a parallel dimension for a parking space.
That's correct. That's
So-
absolutely correct.
So that needs to be adjusted, whether that means you have to go back through any process or not. I would think you actually ought to look at it as a van that can handle at least one wheelchair, if not 2.
And
That's my
I'm just trying
2
to
cents.
understand, is it cars that want to access the curb, or is it vans or accessorized? Because if it is, then you would need like 2 car spaces.
It is a mix of all of those things, but accessorized is certainly one of them.
Okay.
But I will,
Okay.
I will tell you that most, and I don't know what vehicles Westfish intends to run,
Mhm.
but very simple. You want an ambulance to come up? The ambulance is not a car.
In
You don't
my,
have to-
in my opinion, I would ask for 2 car spaces and ask DOT to survey the site to determine whether it's feasible or not. And we would let the community board know.
Anna, is that okay with you? 2 car
Yeah,
spaces?
I can certainly bring it back to my team, and we
Okay.
can see with the design
we'll-
team if that makes sense to request. I think
Can we
it's a
let
good
DOT
suggestion.
analyze it again?
We can DOT, if the resolution says we approve Wishfish to have the length of 2 car spaces for the no standing or the no parking regulations, of course, we would survey the site to determine that. Yeah.
Thank you.
I think that's
Shelley?
a fair compromise.
Yes.
Okay. Shelley.
It's essential, given the number of people who have moved in and will be moving in shortly, to have that space. So I think Colleen's suggestion is well taken, that they should determine what's necessary and where the signage will be, and that'll be the contingency in which this could be approved. I'm the president of Wishfish, so I'm giving that formal declaration. The other thing I want to add, in terms of a notice to the immediate community, there's very little on that block, but nevertheless, perhaps our office can provide Wishfish with a template for that signage, so there's no confusion about what was necessary to be on that signage. That would be appreciated.
Great. But there are a few more people who have their hands raised. I just want to reiterate, we're talking about 1, maybe 2 parking spots, so maybe we could get this moving. Irena, is your hand up for this? And then Rich?
Yeah, I just wanted to speak to Jay's comment about outreach. I don't think we should ever penalize anyone for lack of outreach. I think I think it's the community board's responsibility. If we calendar an item, then it's our responsibility to notify the community that a item has been calendared, the time that they can come and speak to a particular issue. We calendar it. We are holding the public meeting. I do think it's our responsibility. And we could also ask the applicant to augment our outreach by also, because they have a facility in a particular neighborhood, to also support our outreach, but I don't think it should largely fall on the applicant. And so I think it would be great if Anna could reach out to the community between 107th, 108. I know this area quite well. And I think people would want to know, and I think they would welcome it. This building was beautifully done. It's a great addition to this community. It's fabulous. It's fabulous. I was just over there the other day, and I don't think there would be any opposition to having a loading bay, a parking space for this purpose. But I don't think it's fair to penalize the applicant because there wasn't sufficient outreach. Thank you.
Thank you, Rena. Let's have Rich and then Jay, and then we'll have a resolution.
Thank you. And I thought Jay already spoke, but I have 3 quick points. Number 1, as Ira mentioned, there's a huge school on the block. We don't want vans and accessorized double parking and blocking traffic on the block. Number 2, on the topic of notice, it is on the agenda, and I'm wondering where things broke down so that it wasn't signed, there weren't signs put up in the area. We get 11 meetings a year, and spending 2 of them on 1 parking spot when we should be focused on saving lives is crazy. And on that point, we're talking about 1 parking spot for a vulnerable population. It's not something that DOT should even have to go to the community board for approval. It's just a matter of public safety. They should just get it done. I don't see why we have to weigh in on something both this small and this essential for public safety.
Thank you, Rich. And let's wrap it up with Jay.
Yeah, just in line with what Irena was talking about. Irena, we have requirements on this board from time immemorial that applicants are the ones who have to take the responsibility for public notice. We have to do it every month at preservation. Land use has to do it. Every SLA or sidewalk cafe application, there have to be notices posted in the area. And it's always been the responsibility of the applicant. So it's not penalizing anybody. It's just that our meetings are in effect public hearings, and it's up to the applicants to adhere to the normal procedures. So it's not a question of penalizing everybody. I mean, that WSFIS should have, been given that advice by somebody, either DOT or.
Well, I'm sure
so we're not looking to penalize everybody. This is the normal procedure throughout our committees in terms of applications.
Thanks, Jay. Is your hand up for another comment or?
No, I just wanted to respond to that. You said our public meeting. It is our public meeting. I worked for this community board for 5 years. And I've been coming, and then when I worked for the Central Park Conservancy for 12 years, I presented projects to the Parks Committee and the Landmarks Committee for 12 years. And at that time, the notification came from the community board. I never recalled the Parks Department of the Central Park Conservancy being responsible for notifying the public about a project we were presenting. Now, obviously things have changed since I was directly involved, and I hope we revisit that, because I don't think putting the entire responsibility to an applicant who may not be as familiar with the community for notifying the community doesn't seem to make much sense to me. I think it could be a partnership, but we know who our neighbors are. We know who the block associations are. We know this. Many applicants may not. And so I would hope that we could supplement, if we're putting the responsibility for them to notify people about our public hearings, then I think our public meetings, and I hope that we would reconsider that and at least assist them in the outreach rather than leave it entirely on the applicant.
Yeah, I think it's usually both, Arena, but I think COVID has changed this to a certain degree, and we don't have the workers that we.
I appreciate hearing that. I appreciate
And as,
hearing that it's
and as a
both.
practical matter, they will be notifying in advance of the full board meeting. Quick comment from Ken, and then I have a resolution. I don't know if I will propose one that we give the space that Wish Fish has requested. And that's basically the resolution. But Ken will have a quick comment, but that's the resolution. Is there a second?
No, I was going to propose a
no second?
resolution. I was going to propose a resolution. That's why.
Okay,
well,
then you do
but
the
my
honor.
resolution.
I'll second your resolution.
My resolution is for 2 spaces. I think Ira makes a very
I defer to
compelling
Ken's
case.
resolution. I just wanted to get it moving.
Ira makes a very compelling case, and otherwise there's hardly any residential on the block, and there is the school, which gets a lot.
And I second Ken's resolution. Doug has a quick comment. Again, we're talking about 1 or 2 parking spaces.
We're talking about the size of a space that an accessorized van can pull into, obviously.
Or an ambulance.
So can we please try to wrap this up? Doug, do you have a quick comment?
My only point was to Arena and to Jay. I think we can work on that. Yes, typically, like with BCI, when an applicant brings their application to the board, someone from the district manager, and I recognize that Arena was worked in the office, so that it is a partnership between the board and the applicant, and I think we can get more clear on that. My main reason for raising my hand was actually that Peter Arnston has had his hand up, and it looked like he may have wanted to speak on this matter. I don't know.
I don't see Peter.
He's in the attendees.
Hold on, let's promote him. Okay, Peter, you should be able to unmute and speak now.
Good evening. Thanks for taking my hand. Quick notes. There were 3 parking spots that were dedicated to the garages that existed there before, in addition to a number of spots that were used for changing oil or working on cars, where they would jack up the cars and have parts all over the place. So this is not much of a loss of parking spaces. So that's one point. And it's been a while since I put my hand up, so I can't remember the real point of my putting my hand up. I'm so sorry. I'll just—
No, you made a point.
Yes. I'll quickly say that you should all come up and visit. And Anna, I hope you'll be able to share opening days for the facility, because it is something that we've been anticipating. And you should all know that there's local artist Beatrice Carone, who has exhibited or has pieces in the subway system and around the world, has designed fences going around the edge of the facility that are worthwhile also enjoying. So come on up.
Thanks, Peter. And yes, we will be having an opening day celebration when the weather is a bit warmer, and we're excited to keep you all in the loop about that.
And COVID is a little more remote.
Exactly.
I second Ken's resolution, and I call the question. All in favor of providing the access that Wish Fish has requested, please raise their hands.
I've got my electronic one up, so let me try counting those.
Oh, you do the counting. I can't do it.
Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
I can raise my.
That's 6 committee members in favor.
Sorry, I shouldn't raise my hand yet. Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. I just lowered the hands. Any committee members opposed? Please raise your hand now.
I don't know that you lowered the hands.
I'm going to do it again.
Okay, they're all
now,
lowered now.
They're all lowered. So anybody opposed, please raise your electronic hand. Don't see any. Anybody abstaining? I see. Susan, you're not on our committee, so I can't include you. So I see 2 abstentions. So 6020. That's the vote on the committee.
For the committee.
Now,
Yeah.
non-committee board members, wait, let me lower those. Non-committee board members in favor of the resolution. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Great, I'm going to lower those. That's 5. Non-committee board members opposed to the resolution. None. Non-committee board members abstaining on the resolution. 1. Okay, did you get that, Doug?
Yes, I did. I assume nobody is.
And 1 ineligible.
There isn't
1
an
ineligible.
That was
Okay.
committee member ineligible or non-committee ineligible?
Non-committee
member.
Thank you.
Me.
Okay, we're moving along here.
Anna, are you still there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, this will go to the full board, which is the first Tuesday in March. You'll get a
Understood.
notice, okay?
Great. Thank you all so much.
Thank you for coming.
Thanks. Have a good evening.
Yep, thanks a lot. The last item before new and old business is restoring residential street sweeping to pre-pandemic levels of twice weekly and the associated alternate side of the street rules, and a potential resolution regarding the same. I think we've all noticed, I in fact noticed today how much dirtier the street I live on is. So Ken has proposed this, and would you like to make a comment about it, Ken?
Wow. Well, it's actually 2 things. It's that the streets are dirtier. And also, I think there's a problem with the fines, because what's happening is that people are making the very reasonable calculation that compared to the price of a garage, it makes more sense just to eat the ticket, which is, I think, only $65 a week. So some people are paying $65 a week, even if they do get a ticket. Which
And not moving their cars.
And for not moving their car.
Yes.
And so I think if we were going to do a resolution on this, I would like to see doubling the fine. So to make it less worthwhile to be a scofflaw. In addition to having people move twice.
I think this is a great idea. The streets are filthy. Some cars haven't moved for weeks at a time. And, but you know, I think repeat offenders ought to get increased fines. I don't know that we'll get anywhere if we just say double the fine, but repeat offenders, I believe, ought to get double or triple. You know, every time you get more infractions, the fine goes up. That's what's going to happen if you block a bus lane.
Maybe, Andrew, the resolution should simply say higher fines and let whoever figures this stuff out.
That's a good idea,
the
Howard.
best way to escalate them, or so with higher penalties.
Escalate fines for repeat offenders. I like it.
We pay high taxes for experts who figure out the best incentives. Rich, then Jay, then Elena.
So I actually oppose this, and I park my car in the street, and I think that our current system is just insane policy. For one, that we're giving away this incredible resource for free, but we're forcing cars to move either once or twice a week for each side. And what happens is each time the spots open up, cars get there an hour before, and nearly every driver sits in their car with the engine running. So we're cleaning the streets, but polluting the air in the process. We're also forcing cars to drive miles around, creating more congestion, more pollution, and more potential for crashes as people drive around looking for spots. And I find that when it's twice a week, there's that much more traffic, that much more people doing that. There's also that much more turnover of spots, so that many more people driving into the neighborhood looking for spots. And I think that's gotten, it's been a lot worse. It was a lot worse before we went to 1 day a week. So I think the benefits of cleaner streets are more than outweighed by the cost, especially of the extra pollution and of people sitting in their cars idling the engine. So I think we're better off with 1 day a week. But I do completely agree with Ken that the fine is way too low. It should be enough so that it's more expensive to leave your car on the street for a month than it is to park in the lot. And one last thing is, the last time I sat in the car for an hour, the street cleaner didn't even bother cleaning the street because so many cars were blocking its way. It just drove straight past and didn't even clean the street, even though it was the one time a week that it could clean the street. So they need to make sure that's enforced. The guy behind me just drove up, left his car 45 minutes before the spot opened and didn't get a ticket. So there needs to be more enforcement.
Thank you, Rich. Jay, and then Arena, and then Madge.
Yeah, actually, I had a question. Rich answered it. So I don't I don't use a car on the street. I don't park on the street. So now it's once a week instead of twice a week. Is that correct?
Doesn't it depend on the neighborhood, Ken? I noticed where I live that it's twice.
I thought it was kind of district by district or community board district, but
no, it's citywide. That it's only the last time on the sign. So if the sign says no parking Monday, Thursday, it's only Thursday.
But that frequency changes by borough and neighborhood.
Yeah, the signs are different. The signs can be 1 day a week or 2 days a week. If there might still be 3 day a week signs, but
yeah,
they put out word that it's only the last day of the week that you have to move your car.
So, and these changes were made, I assume, because of the pandemic.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, which, and I don't have to go into all the reasons, but there were reasons to do these things. And the other observation I would make is that at least part of the problem is in the areas where we have restaurants in the street, and we've dealt with this in various iterations. Part of the problem with cleaning the streets is the supposedly emergency configuration of the streets with restaurants blocking the lanes. We had a situation in this committee where Columbus Avenue restaurants were complaining because they had to move their temporary installations out of the curb lane so that the streets could be cleaned. My point is that if we're going to consider a resolution to put a larger financial burden on the people that have to park on the street, we should consider making, in those areas where there are restaurants on the street, making the restaurant owners responsible to clean the streets, whether it's the sidewalks or the roadways adjacent to their structures. And I would propose that as an addition to the resolution.
Reina?
So we have a problem with the streets, but we also have a problem with the sidewalks. And I don't mean to take any of Ken's thunder, but I think what's happened is that out of respect for the burden that restaurants endured during the lockdown, there hasn't been any enforcement. If I could just share my screen very briefly, I came out of church on Sunday, and this is, I don't know if you can see it, but this is what I saw when I came out of church on 96th Street between Broadway. Can you see this picture?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, this is what I saw on 96th Street, Sunday morning, 96th Street between Broadway and Amsterdam Avenue. And then I walked a few more blocks. I mean, this is just unbelievable. And this is what I saw on another side street. I walk up to Manhattan Valley quite a lot, and it's pretty bad up there too. And it's not just the street, it's the sidewalk. So I would just hope that we could ask the city to just resume enforcement, both the sidewalk as well as the streets. We have a rodent infestation problem up here, and this kind of trash on the sidewalk and street only exacerbates it. Thank you.
Thanks, Serena. Madge?
You're muted, Madge.
You're muted,
You're
Madge.
muted.
Madge, you have to unmute.
Okay. What I'm saying is years ago when I had a car, the fine was a lot higher than that. $65 was not the fine for a parking ticket. I don't know why it's so low now. And perhaps that's one of the things we could do to help the situation. But also, where are all the enforcement people who were there before the pandemic? Where did they go? Why aren't they doing their jobs now? I mean, it used to be 3 days a week, then it was 2 days a week, and moved it down to 1, and it's still not enforced. So how can we, the community board, who can we contact, and how do we go about actually getting this done?
Good questions.
Besides
Barbara has raised her hand.
Thank you. I am in favor of this resolution. I think that the garbage underneath the cars is disgraceful. And surely there's a huge rat population that is living underneath the restaurant structures. Nobody is cleaning that at all. The city is disgusting. It's never been dirtier. And I agree with you, Arena, that the sidewalks are also disgusting, but that's nothing new. In my neighborhood, like on Amsterdam Avenue in the 70s, I see garbage like that all the time. There's a restaurant a block away from me, and every single morning you see about 500 avocado shells, empty avocado shells, dumped on the sidewalk. So enforcement, yes, but also I would like cleaning on a regular basis. Thank you.
I think Natasha also has raised her hand.
Thank you. I just wanted to point out that we did ask for the resumption of twice weekly street cleaning in our November 2015 resolution in Parks and Environment. And I wholeheartedly support Ken's resolution and what Irena just said, and Barbara as well. Thank you.
And I'll chime in that I grew up in New York in the 1970s, and the streets were dirty. I think they're worse now, actually. So although Ken's resolution doesn't solve the problem, it's at least promoting one step in the right direction. So I'm very much in favor of it. Yep. Ken, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I just want to say that Ken may not vote against his resolution. At least the part, I support the part about the escalating fines, but Rich was very persuasive about the trade-off between more pollution. We've all seen it on I see it on my block. If it's twice a week, you get cars just idling for that many more hours, which is terrible for kids, for seniors, for everybody who breathes the air. Unfortunately, there is no enforcement of idling, which would be wonderful if we had that. So I'm not really sure I would even vote for what I initially proposed for that reason. But
well, we would, Ken.
Are there people in the maybe there are people in the community who want to speak on this?
There are 5 hands raised in the community at this point.
Okay, so why don't we go to the community, and let's see here who has their hand up. Okay, Andrew Rosenthal. You have to unmute and you can speak, and then Susan Seidman.
So thank you. I'll be quick. It seems like there's very little opposition to this. So I don't want the perfect to be the enemy of the good. I think everything that people have said is true. We just need higher fines. I mean, it's infuriating for me to go out and move my car and watch people not show up at all, or when they do show up and the truck comes, they don't move. I've literally seen the sanitation workers get out and knock on someone's window, like move, and they won't. So we definitely need more of all of the above, more enforcement. You know, the meter people do pass by almost every time, whether or not there's a truck that comes by. But you know, right now our streets are not getting clean virtually at all. I would say that 9 times out of 10, no cleaning happens, even when the truck goes by, because they can't access the curb. So any of the above, I think we all ought to be in support of. Thank you.
Again, great. As I said, a step in the right direction. Susan Seidman, then Maria Denzillo.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm at the northern end of Community Board 7, and I can attest that there was a period, so throughout the pandemic, there were hardly any problems with our streets up here in say 106th to 116th Street. And until last fall, when suddenly it seemed like the Department of Sanitation just stopped coming by at all. So I think that was something political, maybe about our previous mayor. That's all I'll say. But who I supported in many other ways. But I think people were just falling down on the job. And also the budget had been severely cut, which is why Catherine Garcia had left the Department of Sanitation and run for mayor. So I do want to say this, though. Please consider this. Once a week was totally sufficient when they actually came around to keep our streets clean. And that the time and resources are much better spent on restoring curbside composting, emptying the carts on the avenues, which get to overflowing because so many people are buying things and eating and throwing things into those, and they just don't get picked up. And I've been doing this for years and years with alternate side parking, and it's true that we really don't need more than once a week, period. And the money could be much better spent on other types of Department of Sanitation things that need to be done.
Thank you, Susan. I'm going to interject now a very sore subject. This community board, almost 2 years ago, asked the DOT for a curbside study to improve the use of the curb. That's exactly what we're discussing now. Colleen, are you there?
I think she left.
Okay, she left. This is exactly what we were seeking, because we can't do this piecemeal, and we can't do this as a community board on the Upper West Side. Again, we asked for this 2 years ago, and we've gotten nothing from them. So.
Okay, well, so now we have a totally new Department of Sanitation, I assume, and we could start from scratch, but it's just not good use of resources to.
I couldn't agree more. And again, this community board asked how resources could be used most efficiently. Dead silent in response.
Well, that's because Catherine Garcia was gone. I rest my case. But let me say this also, I forgot this point. When congestion pricing starts, we already have in Morningside Heights a major park and ride issue where people from the outer boroughs, not the outer boroughs, but the suburbs in New Jersey park in our neighborhood, get on the subway and go downtown. This will only explode if alternate side parking stays at twice a week, because it will give them that much more opportunity to take parking spaces.
Yep. Thank you, Susan. Maria?
Hi. The speaker right before me made pretty much all the points I was going to make, which is kind of interesting because as a car owner and someone who moves my car once a week, and down in the 80s, I've had a very similar experience around the street cleaning. So in the last couple of months, I would say maybe 6 or 7 months, there are weeks and weeks and weeks that will go by where the sweepers don't even come. And so it's really a lack of even weekly cleaning that's going on. And I'm not experiencing, at least where I'm moving my car, people not moving their cars. People do move their cars, but the sweepers are not coming. So that's one point. The second point is that, at least in my area in the 80s, this once a week movement is enormously popular. It's very hard on working people, many of whom are working from home, to move their cars twice a week. And, we don't need to go through all of the pros and cons of owning a car, but the reality is a lot of people own their cars, need their cars, and they're parking on the street. And it's very hard on them to move the car twice. And for reasons that Rich and others have made around traffic and congestion and pollution and danger, it's very dangerous for people with all the cars driving around twice a week. So I think it would be very unpopular to recommend going back to twice a week. I totally agree that the streets are as dirty that I've ever seen them. Not so much the streets, but the sidewalks are just a complete mess. And I think we're conflating a lot of issues here. And I think it might be better to focus on getting sanitation to show up once a week, getting better garbage cans, making sure they're emptied more regularly, getting our sidewalks cleaned up. I think that would be much more popular than going out with a statement that we want to go back to twice a week. And also there is the congestion pricing issue, the congestion parking issue, and the sanitation costs and budget problems that we need to be realistic. And then the final point I want to make is that I'd like to say I have my car, but it was broken into a couple of weeks ago, and they took a part out that's extremely hard to get, very valuable. And so I've been fortunate to have my car parked for free at a repair shop the last couple of weeks. But, we do, again, have a, public safety issues, again, with the increase in cars being broken into. Of course, that's not our issue tonight, but I just wanted to mention that. So, I am against a resolution that would ask for restoring or going back to twice a week for all the reasons everyone said, especially around the environmental issues, costs, and the impact on congestion pricing. So thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. And actually, I'm going to propose a friendly amendment because I also find just creating movement for movement's sake is a bad thing. Maybe the resolution should say that we call upon the city to keep the streets cleaner and to take effective steps to make them cleaner, including but not limited to increased fines for violating the alternate side of the street rules that exist. What do people think of that? Ken, you're the resolver.
Yeah, I'd like to see it a little stronger about the fines, that we call on them to increase these really ridiculously low fines. I mean, maybe the initial is $65, but then for a second offense and a third offense.
Okay, we can throw the word significantly in there. We call upon the city to keep the streets cleaner, and in order to do that, to at the very least significantly increase the fines for violating the alternate side of the street rules, which obstructs their ability to do what they need to do.
Yes.
Howard.
Yes.
You got to put the words increased enforcement in there too.
Yes, higher fines don't mean anything if no one writes tickets.
Yes.
Okay, let's try to wrap this up quickly. We have Shelby and then Amy. You're unmuted, so you can just start talking.
Okay, I agree with, that the twice a week was terrible for pollution. People are sitting idling in their cars. What I have noticed is that people don't even move to the opposite side of the street anymore. They just stay. The street sweeper doesn't come, people just hang out for the hour and a half. And, the enforcement walks by, notes that there's a head in every car and keeps going. And that makes no sense. I think it goes weeks, where the streets aren't swept. Usually when the sweeper does come by, everybody swerves over to the other side and then tries to get back into their space. But maybe if the enforcement went ahead of the sweeper, you know, and cleared the decks, like if there was some better way of doing that, that would be helpful. I do think that you know, repeat offenders, higher fines for repeat offenders, but there are a lot of people who park around here who don't have a lot of money, you know, can't afford a garage, you know, et cetera. And, you know, I don't think that we should be overly burdensome on them.
Thank you. Amy.
Yes, thank you very much. Instead of reiterating kind of everything everybody said, I agree that, you know, you've got the pollution aspect of it. And to Shelby's point, you know, I move my car every week and I actually get frustrated when they don't come around, and they're not coming around, and they haven't been for quite a few months now. So it's, even if it were twice a week, if they're not coming, they're not coming. So I do agree with that kind of amended language. I'd also like to point out that, you know, up in, I think it's the 160s, they've been at one day a week for years now. And you know, that hasn't seemed to affect the cleanliness of their streets. So I think the fines, higher fines, is definitely kind of a better way to go about it, you know, based on all of the information we've talked about tonight. So that's just my thoughts on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. And last but not least, Thomas. Thomas, oh, I have to unmute you. Hang on. Thomas
Caffrey.
Thank you, everybody. And I appreciate your calling on me. I think you want to finish this issue now, but this is something that Olive, Freud, and I wrote to you about, and that we wanted to ask about the 59th Street entrance and exit to Riverside Boulevard, and when that's going to open, and how we talk to Department of Transportation, but that's a different issue.
Yes,
just to
we're
let
going
you
to
know,
wrap this one up, and then we're going to bring up that issue. So
we
just
are
hang on
waiting.
2 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ken, do you want to reiterate your resolution and then we'll vote?
Okay.
Yeah, it's calling on, well, you sort of phrased it first, but it's calling on the DOT, calling on the sanitation to do more enforcement, which would include significantly raising the fines and making them escalating for repeat infractions. I was also going to suggest that, you know, if a traffic enforcement agent can see whether there's a head in the car, they can also write a ticket for violating the anti-idling laws. And so I think part of our resolution should be that we call on the city to enforce the anti-idling laws.
Great. I second it. Let's take a vote. All committee members in favor, raise their
Excuse me,
hands.
I don't understand what we're actually voting on. I
Yeah,
didn't
what are
hear
we
anything
voting on?
about cleaning the streets. Is that there or not? Did we knock that out?
Well,
No,
when
no,
we're
no.
talking about enforcement, we're talking about, yes, we're talking about actually cleaning the streets.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I didn't hear you
making-
mention that at all.
Okay, I didn't, but that
Right.
I meant to
Is
imply.
your radio on or something? No.
Is that going to be in the
I have a
resolution? Because it's a matter of
of
whether
order.
I vote in favor or against.
Okay, the resolution that I'm voting for opens with, in order to keep the streets cleaner, we need more enforcement and higher fines, but the major.
And more
thrust of the
regular
resolution-
cleaning, which we're not getting.
Yeah, but the opening will be about cleaning, correct, Ken?
Yes.
Someone needs to mute Thomas.
Yeah, I'm gonna do it.
Okay. Shall we vote?
I have a point of information. Are we, apropos of Elena's observation and photographs, are we not going to put any language in there about the obligations of property owners, including restaurants that have locations in the street to fulfill their obligations to keep their areas, their adjacent areas clean as well.
Actually, Jay, that's part of the new in-street dining laws that are being debated by the city council right now. Restaurants would have to clean around their outdoor structures.
Well, with respect, we don't know what's going to be.
Okay, I think that's a separate issue. There's the issue of, I know on my street, homeowners throw out tons of, wait, can I finish? Tons of garbage bags and they break open. Ken has proposed this specific resolution. If you want to propose a resolution, Jay, on that issue, that would be fine. But I just want to keep it to this at this point.
Jay, I just want to say that I think as long as we're asking for increased enforcement, I would be satisfied with the wording. But if you want to strengthen it, I understand. But I'm really asking for enforcement. I don't think we're getting any enforcement right now.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot that can be done. But again, the perfect should not be the enemy of the good. This is one step in the right direction, in my opinion. And I think we should vote on this one step.
Let's vote.
Could I just raise who enforces businesses keeping their sidewalk clean? Is that
that's not relevant to this resolution? It's
sanitation.
It's sanitation.
So if we're doing a resolution calling on sanitation to clean the streets, I think it's close enough that it fits in, because we're talking about calling on sanitation to do more enforcement. So it does get relevant when it's.
Well, then why don't we?
No, it's not sanitation that enforces that's the DOT, isn't it? Irena, you know about this.
Sanitation is responsible for sidewalk and street enforcement of businesses, not DOT, to my knowledge, unless things have changed because of open dining. But historically, it's been under the jurisdiction of the.
I think it still is.
Oh, it's the I thought it was the DOT that gives fines for violating the alternate side of the street rules.
Oh, yes.
That's what I'm talking. Yes. So we're talking about different things.
But that goes back to Jay's point, because that means you're focusing primarily on that, and you're missing the dirty sidewalk. So, okay.
Okay, that's another resolution. But we'll put it on next month's agenda. This month we'll do the streets. Next month we'll do the sidewalks. How's that for a plan? Okay, call the question.
Call the question.
All those in favor? Do you want to count, Andrew?
I'm counting. Committee members is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 committee members. Okay, I'm going to lower those hands. Any committee members opposed? 1. Let me lower that. Any committee member abstaining? 1. Okay, so that's 8-1-1-0.
So that was Barbara Adler's hand. Barbara is not on the transportation. Oh,
yes,
Barbara,
she is.
Oh, sorry, Barbara is on the transportation. Sorry.
No problem. Non-committee board members in favor of the resolution. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4. Okay. Non-committee board members opposed to the resolution. Nobody. Non-committee board members abstaining. Okay, so that's 4-0-0-0.
Okay.
There were 5 hands up. There were 5 hands up, digital hands in the non-committee vote. I don't know, Andrew, were you manually counting, but they were just FYI.
I didn't look at the physical hands. I'm only looking at the electronic ones. What, any of those?
Yeah, and there were 5 electronic hands up. I
agree with Doug.
In favor, you mean?
I saw the same thing.
Okay, then I miscounted.
Unless
I think there may be one person who's not a committee member.
That is possible. Yeah, that is possible.
I think that's what you may have seen.
If someone was voting that shouldn't have been voting, understood.
Yeah.
Okay, we've gotten through our agenda. Is Colleen still here?
No, she isn't.
Okay, any old business or new business? We had one person who raised the Riverside Drive 59th Street exit. Thomas, do you want to speak now? I've unmuted you.
Okay, thank you. Just briefly, I know it's 9:20 or so.
Yes.
I just wanted to say, we of the Committee for Environmentally Sound Development, especially Olive Freud and myself, have been watching those lanes, those two ramps, one leading south from Riverside South and one leading north, both of them to and from the highway, for about 2 years now, basically complete. It seems the developers, according to the restrictive declaration, have finished their 2 blocks of ramp there from 61st to 59th Street on the West Side Highway, to and from, in order to allow use of Riverside Boulevard for especially uptown traffic in the evening and downtown traffic in the morning. However, it's not open. And we've come to the committee once before, I think about a year and a half ago, and to ask, and I think you've been in communication with the Department of Transportation on this. We're just wondering what we should do at this point, or what has been done up to this point, and what is the reason that the 2 ramps are not being used.
Yeah, we obviously would have liked it if Colleen was still here and we could have asked her, but we can certainly follow up. We have asked about this many months. The last time I think we brought this up was 6 months ago, and they said, we'll get back to you. It's going to happen soon, and it still hasn't happened.
So would you like us to go to court? What do you think we should do?
No, I think we have a good relation with DOT. We'll ask them when it's likely to happen.
I know, I see it's an excellent relationship.
Yeah, we ask a lot of questions. It's the answers.
Yeah, we don't always get answers, like Howard mentioned about the curbside stuff.
How about, why don't you say a couple of real rebel rousers from the community were at the meeting tonight, and have been watching this impatiently, and they're forming a mob. How about that? And then you take it from there, or should we do something, or?
We'll take it from there.
What do you suggest?
You raise the mob issue and we'll take it from there.
No, should we come back to the committee? Should we come to the community board meeting? Maybe the community board itself on next Tuesday. I mean, next month.
Yeah, that's fine. But we'll try to get you an answer before that.
Thanks so much, Albert. Okay.
Andrew, yes.
Andrew, I'm sorry. I always
That's
call
okay,
you.
Captain.
I always call you Albert.
We're going to use last names.
Thank you, Thomas.
Okay.
Shelley, do you have your hand raised?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Speaking of things that been on the agenda that haven't been done 3.5 years ago or so, this committee voted, I believe unanimously, or either unanimously or very close to it, to have a crosswalk on 106th Street going between the Red Oak and Jewish Home Day Center. And we were told that the plan would be this is the 10th iteration. It would be by October would be done. So I asked for the plan. They said they don't give out plans. Okay.
It's approved. We know it's approved.
And we know it's approved. So now
I think COVID had something to do with it, Shelley. I have a feeling it's coming this spring.
Okay. I was told the last time, and in March, it's going to happen. Well, there's so many people waiting for it that we want to have a celebration.
Yeah.
Okay. And we can't plan the celebration balloons kind of, shrivel up if you keep them too long. So if you could just push it, that for a real
We'll
date.
try to get you a date. Yep.
Thank you.
And we'll get the
Appreciate your
mob
help.
to come along to march from 59th too.
Yeah, we'll just get the mob to move further north. That's all.
We'll be there.
I think we've
Oh,
had a
no,
long meeting,
Rich,
folks.
do you have your hand
I do.
raised?
As long as
Okay.
Shelley's playing the we asked DOT for something years ago and haven't heard back. After the tragedy on the 96th Street transverse in Central Park, we called on DOT, Parks, and the precinct to come up with a plan to keep bikes safe going east-west, and we've heard nothing.
You know
And-
what? I planned, that was on my list. That's why I asked at the beginning of this whether Colin was still here. I had a list that was on the list. We have the 72nd Street reconfiguration. We have daylighting. We have all sorts of things
Yes.
that
A lot
so
of
I
unfinished
will
business.
put it together in an email to her, from me to her, and that will definitely be on the list, Rich.
I felt like the response to the Rotunda resolution raises questions about if they pay any attention to anything we do.
I know it's and that's a point that I tried to make to Colleen. It's demoralizing when it seems they just ignore it. If they say we can't do it for X, Y, Z, that's one thing. If we just adopt these resolutions and they seem to go into the circular file, it's very demoralizing to all of us, I think, as volunteers. So.
But
There was a reason.
They didn't ignore everything. They kept the ball fields. There were other elements, right?
No,
that
they did
you
not
asked
ignore
for?
everything. No, you're right. I have a list of things they've ignored. I don't have a list of things they've done. And that is a significant list too. Thank you for putting that in perspective. Yes, you're right. Talk about seeing the glass half empty. Anyone else? Ken.
Yeah, well, when it came to the color of something inside the rotunda on the second level, they were really careful about adhering to what we wanted. And so, I guess they picked their what they want to do. But I just, in terms of the cross park routes, I just point out we have a new parks commissioner who was just appointed a couple of days ago. Used to run the Prospect Park Alliance. So that it seemed to me it was hopeful.
Great. I think that's it.
A member of the community just wrote in the Q&A, Alan Romer says he's waiting to speak.
Oh, okay. Alan Romer, let's see. Okay, you're unmuted, Alan.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. Thank you. And I know it's late, but I've been patient here as well. And I appreciate having heard some of the comments regarding 96th Street and West End Avenue during the discussion around the Rotunda. I also appreciated Mr. Diller's comments of raising that. I actually put in a request to Mr. Diller when he was chair over 2 days ago, regarding this intersection. And really, it's just a pedestrian safety issue. Very specifically, there is no street light overhanging or illuminating the crosswalk on 96th Street between the northwest and southwest corners of the intersection. So that is on the gas station side, between the school and what is now a bodega on the corner. And as a result, cars turning right while they're heading southbound on West End, or cars turning left while they're heading northbound on West End, don't have sufficient lighting to see pedestrians crossing that street in the evenings. And I think everybody appreciates how dangerous this intersection can be. And given the speeds that cars are starting to attain now as they cross the either the intersection itself or making that hard right turn or left turn. And somebody said earlier today, you get a false sense of security from the traffic lights. Well, you certainly get a false sense of security with the crosswalks at that intersection now. And it's a matter of time, folks. I really, I've requested this before. The other 3 crosswalks on that intersection are illuminated, and for reasons I don't understand, the 4th one is not. So I really would encourage the community board here and the transportation committee to, channel this to the DOT or whomever to evaluate the need.
We absolutely will. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I mean, it seems fairly obvious. I would say one more thing about this intersection. If they're there working, and if anybody's been in that area, the noise nuisance is incredible from car horns because people don't appreciate that there is a left turn signal there. Again, if you are heading northbound on West End Avenue, taking a left into the West Side Highway, there is a traffic light there that people just don't seem to get, that there's a left turn light. And I was going to video it, and I saw that one of I think Ms. Stennett was able to share her screen if I had been able to do so. People just lay on the horns all evening long. The impatience factor is huge. Even a sign hanging down that just says, left rated on green, just to bring people's attention to it would be really,
And that intersection is going to get a lot more traffic with the rotunda work. So we're
No
definitely going
doubt.
to make sure.
No doubt. And then, look, I guess the last thing, this is probably a little out of scope, but I'll say it anyway. I think anybody who has a car appreciates there are very few gas stations here in the city. That mobile station serves quite a few people coming and going. But clearly there is a big backup that occurs regularly with respect to people trying to get in and out of there, especially given the challenges of entering and exiting. There is some space now on the northern side of 96th Street there. I don't know if some sort of gas staging lane makes sense or if that's too much. There's a non-traffic lane that's there. Some people use it for double parking. There might be a hydrant there. Again, separate issue, but once people start backing up, the everything just gets worse. And again, more focus is going to come on this intersection. But first and foremost, before we have a pedestrian injury, I really encourage you to look at the lighting there. And maybe the noise nuisance from just a simple sign that just tells people to take a left on the arrow would be great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for hearing my comments.
I just wanted to say that this is where Cooper Stock died in 2014. It wasn't near here.
It was
Cam? I thought
97.
It was near.
Oh, 97th. Okay. But my point is, thank you for correcting me. I knew it was in this area, but I think to Andrew's point that there's going to be a lot more traffic here. And I think we really ought to press DOT as part of that larger rotunda project to add a light here.
Can I speak?
Yes.
I agree. Thank you, Mr. Romer, for bringing this up. I personally know someone who was struck by a left-turning car at that intersection and was seriously injured. I believe we have called for both a neck down at that corner to shorten the crossing distance.
We have.
And also a pedestrian refuge island on the western side of that intersection, which would force drivers to take the turn much more slowly. So certainly more lighting would help, but how are we going to do this, Andrew? Are we just going to write a letter? Are we going to do a resolution?
We're going to call Colleen. That's what we're going to do.
Okay. Well, in that call,
we don't need a resolution unless she says, I want it in writing. We'll be happy to do that.
Are we going to reiterate our calls for these other two infrastructure changes?
We are. Just to be clear, we have taken steps to make that intersection safer. What we got DOT to do was to change the light pattern so that if you thought you could speed through 97th, make the southbound turn on West End and then the right turn on 96 to get to the highway, and you could all do that in one phase, you cannot do that anymore. We did that after the Cooper Stock tragedy. So we have done some things, but street lighting is a no-brainer.
Yeah, and the neck down and the refuge island are also.
No, we're going to ask for those again, of course.
Okay.
Yeah, the poles are there. I mean, sorry if you can hear me still. The poles are there, and they illuminate the other three crosswalks. But again, for reasons I don't understand, the most dangerous place for pedestrians right now is where people are where they're looking to get to on the West Side Highway, and not so much about who's crossing that street. And I will tell you, me and my 7-year-old have been nearly struck on a few occasions in the dusk time. So hopefully this is something the DOT can act on well before any efforts related to the rotunda, but just put up the light. Pretty straightforward.
Absolutely. Thank you for bringing it up.
Can I just reinforce a few things? One is as I said earlier in the call, this has consistently been one of the worst intersections in our district. I haven't looked at the data recently, but after the West End redesign, all the other intersections got safer, while 96 and West End got worse. So it's, it was clearly still an issue. There's also an elementary school right on that block, so it's that much more of a concern. And the construction both on 96th Street and the construction at the Rotunda is going to create that much more stress in this intersection. So it's really a ticking time bomb. And thank you to Mr. Romer for bringing this up.
I appreciate your comments, Mr. Robbins. And I will say during the daytime with the school, I actually know personally the crossing guards who are there. There's 2 of them every morning. They do a phenomenal job. I commend them both in the day and in the afternoons. And on occasion, the city, the police department is there bringing traffic people as well. But, bear in mind that in addition, we have the large project on 96th and Broadway. Another one is going to get underway shortly with Fettner's efforts at 266 West 96, which is going to bring yet another project there, another bump out, and things are going to get much tighter in the 96 corridor between West End and Broadway, and only create more backups and, for that matter, more impatient drivers going in every direction. So, I appreciate your comments as well. Thanks.
Okay, folks, I believe that should do it for us. Great meeting, a lot of important issues raised, a lot of great participation by everybody, and hopefully everybody stays safe, and we will see you at full board.
Yes, see you in 3 weeks.
Yep.
Thank
I have a
you.
motion to adjourn.
Second.
So adjourn. Good night.